Today's guest is Tyler Nottingham. Ty is a retired veteran of the United States Army. He served 3 years as an active duty infantryman with the 82nd Airborne Division before transferring to the Illinois National Guard, where he also served in the infantry for 7 years. After a short break in service, he reenlisted to serve 10 more years in aviation, first as a helicopter mechanic and then 7 years as a Blackhawk pilot. He is currently a Decatur police officer with over 20 years of service, as well as an EMT and a volunteer firefighter. So please welcome today's guest, my cousin, Tyler Nottingham. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
How was the drive down? Uneventful, I guess.
Yeah, uneventful.
Yeah, early morning here.
Blasting my music like I normally do.
What are you listening to now?
I listen to a little bit of everything, Josh, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, the older I get, ironically, of course, the more jaded we get towards society and life.
Yeah.
My
20 years working as a cop in Decatur might have a little to do with that.
Yeah, my music has gotten a little more edgy.
Yeah.
You know.
Let me ask you this. How hard do you get? What's the level, like the hardest rock that you listen to?
Well, I listen from anything from Hardy
all
the way up to Tom McDonald, which is rap.
Right, yeah.
You know, I mean, it depends.
So, but I mean, are you
But
doing
I listen
like
to
any...
Metallica.
Okay.
I listen to, old stuff, new stuff, whatever. I mean, if it has an edge to it, I like it.
Because I listen to a lot of, I like great old classic country.
Yep, as do I.
And hard rock. Well, and classic rock.
Yeah.
But I always tell everybody, Pantera, that's my level.
Yeah.
Anything that goes harder than Pantera.
I've got Pantera on my playlist.
Yeah. But you know, when they get into like the death metal stuff,
Yeah.
I'm out, man.
Yeah.
It just, to me, that, you know, it's like,
Like Mammoth and Lamb of God and the others guys. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like there's no melody. There's no, at least have,
Sure.
But,
Five Finger Death Punches. I'm a big fan of them as well.
yeah, they're a good band. So, okay, I've already done, the bio, so everybody listening knows you've done a lot.
Yeah.
So let's just get back into that. We'll start with your upbringing, where you grew up, where you graduated.
Yep. So, grew up in Shelbyville. Had a 2-parent household up till I was about 7 years old. Mom and dad ended up getting divorced.
Right.
Both my parents were obviously still very active in my life, mom and dad both. Mom got remarried to John, my stepdad. Dad got remarried to Linda twice, and then he's had other, relationships. But, I spent a lot of time at grandma and grandpa's and aunts and uncles. We had, our get-togethers, on mom's side, and
it seemed like, a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were either up at Stan's, out at the farm,
Yep.
or we would, or up at grandma's.
Yep.
Do you remember Herbie City?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever climbed a tree so high I got stuck and had to be helped down.
Okay. Yeah. do you remember the time, and this is, I don't mean to sidetrack you,
yeah,
but do you
absolutely.
remember the time you and I got in trouble? We were out on the highway throwing that stuff at the cars going
They
by.
were hedge apples.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, man. Yeah.
we in our brilliant minds, we would conceal ourselves in the
There's like
ditch,
a bush,
and as it went by, we would pop up and we'd launch a hedge apple out, and we'd run inside.
Pretty good plan. I guess.
Yeah.
But so
it was for our 7-8-year-old minds. 10,
hobbies.
Yeah. So growing up again in high school, went to Shelbyville High School. I was one of those kids that, ironically speaking, after seeing how my life ended up going, I was actually kind of one of those kids that was kind of a wuss. I was always kind of afraid of getting hurt. I was always afraid of doing things too risky. Had kind of a smart mouth, which that wasn't a very good combination. But, so initially when I started out in sports, it was those sports that were more soft contact, like I did track, I did basketball, that sort of thing. And it wasn't until probably my junior year of high school, it was an actual mental reckoning to myself. And I told myself, I'm a wuss. I need to start toughening up. So I went out for football, started doing more contact things. But also within there, I was a drummer. I was, big into band, and, I did, drama, acting, whatever, musicals, that sort of thing. I was actually pretty good at drumming.
You're real good at drumming.
Yeah.
You're really good.
Ultimately, I had talked to the instructor over at Eastern Illinois University. Nathan Jesse was my band instructor at Chevrolet High School, and he had picked me up with the guy over there at Eastern at the time. And I was talking to him, and he said, "Yeah," he goes, "you need to enroll yourself in piano lessons if you want to go to college and you want a scholarship. But if as long as you do that and you maintain that," he goes, "we're going to offer you a scholarship to come over to Eastern."
I did not know that.
Yeah, but I turned it down to go to the military.
Right. Yeah. Which I guess in hindsight it worked out for you. But,
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. It was one of those, it wasn't an official on paper, offer. It was,
Right.
I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, he goes,
You're good enough.
yeah, we're going to, offer this to you if you choose to take it, type of thing.
Sure.
Right. So yeah, I turned that down. We have a lot of obviously military in our family,
Oh yeah.
from mom's side, which that's how you and I are related for people who don't know.
Yes.
Your mother is the sister to my mother.
Yes.
So,
Right.
yeah, for those of us that don't know how we're related, that's how we're related.
And our grandfather, again, our maternal grandfather,
Yes.
was. I've got pictures. I don't know if you've seen them. If you haven't in a while, anyway, Uncle John sent them to me. Which our Uncle John was the 6th graduating class of the United States Air Force Academy.
I didn't know that.
Either 6th or 7th. Anyway, his father, so it'd be our grandfather, was first born German in this country. They immigrated from Germany. He's first generation born.
Yep.
Enlisted to fight who? The Germans.
Yes.
Was in the OSS, which is the Office of Strategic Services,
Yep.
which ended up becoming the CIA. And I've got a picture of him in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in 1944, in plain clothes, smoking a cigarette.
Really?
Now, what do you suppose, or maybe it was 45, what do you suppose a firstborn German immigrant was doing in Buenos Aires, Argentina, working for the United States Army in plain clothes?
Well,
We know what he was doing.
yes.
He was chasing the bad guys that were fleeing Germany.
Yes. And, there is actually a basically Germanic city down in South America.
There's several of them.
Yes. They speak
They're
German.
German.
Yeah.
They're German. They just live in
everything
yeah.
is German. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
have you ever seen any of Tim Kennedy's stuff on that?
maybe. I
he's
watch a lot of different things. So.
Okay, but yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that's how we are. And then our Uncle Stan
Yep.
is, my dad will say, the only man he's ever known, and I can say this as well, that survived an L-shaped ambush.
Yep. Same. Yep.
Yeah, which is just,
That's crazy. To
that's
think
as
about.
bad as it gets.
Absolutely.
Anyone listening to this that's not familiar, just think of an L. Your patrol walks into that L, so you're catching fire from the front, and let's say your right flank, and they're right on you.
Yep.
And he ended up pushing through.
Yep.
He did what you're supposed to. Dropped his ruck, ran right through it, and I guess he ran through it.
Yep.
And then realized, fog of war kind of thing. They're shooting behind him, shooting the other way, and he turns around and he sees guys somehow in the middle of it. They just didn't see him. He just ran right through them.
Yep.
And they're focused on other people, and then pow, pow, he started working down the line. But so we have military a little bit.
And I've got it on dad's side as well. My grandpa Nottingham, he was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division during World War II, but he was not airborne qualified.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I'll be darned.
He was actually in Italy during World War II. I think he was there kind of toward the end. But he was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division, that, if I remember correctly, but was not actually airborne qualified.
Right.
And then, of course, I have a couple of uncles on dad's side also that were in the Army during the Vietnam era. But again, they were there kind of toward the end of the Vietnam era. It's funny because I talked to Dad, because Dad, he talked to me. He's like, yeah, he goes, I kind of regret not going in, the military, sometimes.
Sure.
He said, and I said, did you just, why didn't you go? And he's like, well, he goes, I talked about it. He said, but my Uncle Doug and my Uncle Steve were already both in. They had already been served to Vietnam. And when I talked about joining, he said, grandma, or he said mom, but my grandma Mert, he said, she looked at me straight in the eyes. She goes, you join, I'm going to kick your,
Yeah.
you know what?
Yeah.
He said, okay, well, I guess I'm not going.
Well, if you've already got 2 sons.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's, when you think about, and then, back to Grandma Soa.
Yeah.
She had 2 sons.
Yeah.
Both of them were in Vietnam,
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
so what was that it? Was it just the familial tie that made you want to go in, or was it
that? And we were kids growing up in the 80s, and G.I. Joe and all that sort of stuff. So it was always oh yeah, I want to kick butt and take names, America, whatever. It was that aspect of it, and looking back, like I think when I originally went in, I did it with the intent of joining the National Guard because I wanted to start making money between my junior and senior year.
Right.
That was the intent.
Right.
But when I went down to MEPS, maybe it was before MEPS. And MEPS is the Military Interest and Processing Station down in St. Louis.
Right.
When I say MEPS, that's what I'm talking about. That's
right.
where they process everybody going into the military, in our region anyway. When I went down to talk to him, I think it was too late for me to get into a basic training because I was going to go into. I wanted to do split op, right?
Right.
I wanted to do basic training during this summer, and then be in the National Guard through my senior year, and then go through AIT the next summer. That was the intent.
Right.
But I had signed up late enough that I couldn't get basic training that summer. So I was like, well, you know what? I guess I'll just do it, next year. But then I started talking to an active duty recruiter, and he's like, well, if you're going to do that, why not just go with active duty? Because, now you're going to be waiting anyway. So I was like, yeah,
right.
Okay, why not?
Right.
So September of my senior year of high school, which would have been 92 to 93, I graduated in 93. I went down to MEPS. I took my ASVAB test. And of course, being the genius that I am,
I don't sell yourself. Yeah.
I did pretty good on my ASVAB.
Yeah, I have no
and
doubt.
I had, I think, 81 different job offers, that I could have taken. I looked at 3 of them because what I wanted to do is I wanted to be airborne. I wanted nothing longer than a 3-year contract, and I wanted the Army College Fund. So the third job that popped up was 82nd Airborne Division Infantry, 3 years Army College Fund. I said, I'll take it. I didn't look at the other,
that was
78
right.
jobs that were available.
It punched the tickets.
That's right. Yeah. So again, the genius that I was, I signed up for Airborne Infantry, and I get
could have
home.
done a lot of other things.
Yeah. And I went home, and Dad's like, "Hey," he goes, so how'd it go? And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna be a airborne." He's like, "All right, well, what are you gonna what's your job? What are you gonna do?" I was like, "Well, I'm airborne." He's like, "Okay, but you have a job that goes along with that." Well, I guess
that's a means of conveyance.
I guess my job is to jump out of airplanes and shoot people. He's like, okay. He kind of looked at me like I was an idiot, and that's kind of how it all started.
You volunteered to go be infantry and jump out of
Yes.
planes.
Yes.
That's what you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, but you know what? Mixed up in a lot of this, and I think from all of us talking, we forget the adventure part of it.
yeah.
You grew up in these, we're from these little hick towns.
Yep,
We've
absolutely.
never really done or seen the world. You're leaving
It's a way
home.
out.
It is a way out.
It's a safe way out.
And it's an adventure. You're going to go, you're leaving home to go you're going to jump out of airplanes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Yeah. And it's a safe way out. And by safe, I mean, there's obviously there's risk to it, but it's safe in that, you're going to have a paycheck at the end of every month, and you're going to have, 3 hots and a cot.
Whenever they, the old drill sergeants, your mama's not here, we are your
Right.
mama. There's a lot of truth to that.
Absolutely.
You're going to be fed. You're
Yep.
going to be housed.
Yep.
You're going to have medical care.
Yep.
You're going to get a paycheck. You're exactly right. You're not just going to be abandoned. That is kind of like your new mom and dad.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's a way out. It's a way to see the world. And it's actually a pretty good way to see the world.
Yeah.
I think
It was back then.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, we
don't get too into politics.
Yeah, we don't want to
and
get
whatever,
into
but-
politics, but yeah, certainly at the time frame, we had just come out of, we had won. I think, in my opinion, it's America's greatest victory.
Yeah.
I think the Gulf War,
Yeah.
even bigger than the Revolution. I mean, all those things. People forget that was
It was the greatest in efficiency, certainly.
we were the 3rd largest army fighting the 4th largest army.
Yeah.
People forget that.
Yeah.
Iraq had the fourth largest army in the world at that time. They
Yeah.
had, 10 years they had fought with Iran. They were battle seasoned. Our guys were green. We haven't had a war, a big, we'd had Panama and Grenada, small, but we hadn't had a war since Vietnam.
But if you think about it, we were set up perfectly for it because our military was geared toward Russia. Right?
Exactly. And they had all Russian stuff.
Open battlefields,
Right,
heavy tanks, that sort of thing. That's what we were built for.
Yeah.
And then you get us out in a wide open desert against other tanks, and we just absolutely decimated.
I mean, it was to the point. I remember watching one of the generals saying that they were debating. They said it got to the point that we had to worry about the international community because at what point does it stop being war and start being murder?
Right. Yep.
I mean, But so we were coming after that again, child of the 80s. We're rah, rah, rah. We're doing our thing. You sign up, you report to Benning.
Yep.
And how does it go?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'm like, every, young kid that wants to get out of their hometown and, see the world. It's a culture shock. Well, with me, it was kind of interesting because when I first got there, it was July 1st. Right, and they were going into the July 4th weekend.
Okay.
So we went to replacement battalion. Right, of course, you get on your airplane, or you're down at MEPS for a couple of days. That second day, like 4 o'clock in the morning, they wake you up. You go down, you get onto the airplane. They fly you down to Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, and then you hop on a bus and they bus you up to or over to Fort Benning. So you get off the bus and it's kind of like the movies, they're kind of yelling at you a little bit, everybody's getting in line, they're screaming at you, whatever. They get you in the replacement battalion. But then for me, it was one of those, okay, now everybody's here. This is, where the chow hall's out. This is what time you eat. We're going to have somebody wake you up and get you there. But then everybody left because it's 4th of July weekend. And nobody is working.
It's all the cadre.
Yes. Yeah. It was the person that drove the short straw that was there over the weekend that, was working. That's who was in charge of us. And of course they didn't want to deal with us.
Right.
And so we were basically sitting in a room, just staring at each other all weekend.
Oh man. Yeah.
I mean, it was weird to say the least. But then, after that 4th of July weekend, of course, the drill sergeants came down, they get us all in, big formation. They march us down the road to, where we're going to actually do our basic training, which, for me, and for most active duty infantry guys, it's what they call one station unit training, OSA, one station. Yeah. Yep. So for me, it was, basic training. We had a family day weekend, which was like a 3-day weekend, I think. And then as soon as you come back, it's like you fall back to the same drill instructors, the same bunks, the same everything. It's like, welcome to AIT, get out and do push-ups.
Yeah.
Just like, ah. Yeah. It's just, more weeks of your own hell.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which of course that, that was interesting because, I had a visit from somebody when I was down there.
Yeah. That was, which I've talked about on another podcast, but that was funny because, of course I'd been in the Army for a couple of years before I got jump school. I didn't get it in my contract.
Sure.
And so I get down there and of course you have weekends off.
Yep.
And, the rest of the idiots are, they're straight out of basic,
right.
and they've got their basic training mentality. They want to go to a strip club. They want to go to, all the, and of course I'm a little older and I've been in the Army for a while. It's like, honestly, what I would do is I would rent a room every weekend.
Yeah.
Right there. I'd get a hotel room and I would just go hang out by myself.
Yeah. That's smart.
I just wanted to be away from those idiots.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I go down there and I thought, and I didn't know, hey, if they let me see you, great. If they don't, all right, that's fine. And, but and then I walked into that, and that was like your guys' first weekend that you got to go down there. And I just remember how tall are you? 6'4"?
I'm 6'4", yeah.
6'4", right? Yeah. And of course, you can eat like a horse.
Yeah.
And skinny kid, they're running you around, tall as you are. I know, because I walk in, like I said, there's an arcade, there's all the, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Because everybody is shaved heads, they're all skinheads, everybody looks the same. I'm walking through. And then it hits me. There's a pizza place. And I'm like, Ty's going to be eating because he's going to want to refuel because he's going to be starving.
Yep.
And I walk in and boom. Yeah, I remember. And it was literally the classic double take. You looked at me and then you looked down and then you threw your head up and it's like you could just see the confusion. You know? But yeah.
Yep.
that was funny.
Yeah, we were, you're right. That was our first weekend that we had a chance. I think we had like a 2 or a 4 hour pass or something like that. Cause when I was down, of course it's all mechanized now. They don't have, down there where I was at, we were 3rd of the 32nd Infantry.
Okay.
And 3rd of the 32nd Infantry doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
It's been, rearranged or, whatever. But, we were the last, what they call high intensity training cycle, basic trainees to go through.
Right.
So, the company who was just on the other side of us, we call it a starship because it looks like a giant starship. You have one big center building, and then you have arms that come off, of the center building. And where the center building is, that's where, your chow hall and all the admin and all that stuff are. And then these arms that come off are basically dorms is what they are.
Right. Giant
open, breezeway dorms. And, the company who was just to the side of us, they were not a high intensity training cycle. So we had already been there for, it was either 2 or 4 weeks. I can't remember which, when they first came in. And their first weekend, they were going to the PX unaccompanied, and they were doing all this other stuff. And
why would there be a difference between, why would one be high intensity and the other one's not?
Because this was during the era when the military was going through kind of a transition where they were trying to become a kinder, gentler.
And it was the drawdown.
Yes.
It was Bill Clinton was president.
It was 93.
Yeah. They were cutting. Okay. Yes.
Yep. 93.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that they were trying to do that transition to, the kinder, gentler army.
Yeah.
So they were I don't know if they were the first, but they were a basic training company that was not like a high intensity training cycle, basic training
like
company.
what just basic training used to normally be.
Yeah. So of course we were looking at those guys. We hated them.
Oh yeah. I can only imagine.
But obviously I survived everything, turned out pretty cool, but it's the typical, you're on fire guard at 3:00 in the morning and, you hear something, you look down and you walk into the latrine and you see a guy standing there, pretty much buck naked wearing his LBV, taking a leak in the urinal. And you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Cause you're so tired. Your brain just does what,
Weird
you're not leaving
things.
your equipment. So you put your equipment on to go take a leak, but you don't realize you're getting out of your bunk, wearing your underwear or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those things,
Right.
So, and of course you do silly things, you don't, every morning when you have to get up and you have to, make your bunk, right. You have to have the hospital corners, all that other stuff. So, eventually what you end up doing is you try to get smart to that. And so you sleep on top of your covers and you try to cover up with like a poncho line or your, wool blanket or whatever. So when in the morning you get up, you just have to kind of tighten it up a little bit. Well, there was a kid I went to basic training with, Montgomery, which he ended up actually being in my 82nd Airborne Division unit also. He had the very first bunk at the end where the drill sergeants walked up.
Yeah.
Drill sergeants use different access points than the troops did, right?
Right.
Or the trainees. So his was the first bunk that the drill sergeant saw when he walked in. And of course, the drill sergeant gets up, everybody starts waking up, he's making noise, doing the whole basic training thing. And Montgomery had gotten to the point where he was sleeping in his sleeping bag on top of his bunk, right? Which, okay, fine, whatever. But when he went to unzip his sleeping bag, it got stuck. So he was stuck in his sleeping bag on top of his bunk with the drill sergeant standing over yelling at him. And of course, we're all jumping up, doing our, getting up. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm trying to get out, drill sergeant. He's like, here, let me help you. Yeah. And he grabs the bunk and just flips the whole thing with a government and everything, so.
That's funny. One of the things that, you get a lot of advice from the older guys before you go in, and you listen to everybody and they say, don't volunteer for anything.
Right.
I was the first bunk. When the drill sergeants walked out of their office, I'm the first bunk. I'm right there.
Okay.
So they'd be in their office and I need one. And everybody is supposed to immediately stop what you're doing and run up. I was never the first one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You find a way to not, but yet I'm always like third or fourth. And sometimes they might need 4 guys. And you're like, oh man,
Yeah.
But yeah, all the little mind games that they play.
Oh yeah. Like you get your mail and they, you have to do push-ups for mail or, flutter kicks or whatever.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny because one of my drill sergeants, he had been in the 82nd Airborne Division and he came over to be a drill instructor. And I was through my advanced individual training, my AIT, almost like probably 2 weeks before the end of my AIT. And, we're doing mail call, and he can, calling out names. He's like, Nottingham. I was like, here, drill sergeant. He looks, he's like, who are you? And I was like, I've been here all cycle, drill sergeant. He's like, where are you going after this, Nottingham? And I was like, I'm going to the 82nd Airborne Division, drill sergeant. He's like, oh, hell no. He goes, from now on, every time you see me, I don't care how far away I am, just get down and do push-ups. Like, yes, drill sergeant. He started over knocking him out. So I know what you mean about not being seen, just kind of trying to fly as low as you can into the radar, because you don't want to be that nail that sticks out and gets hammered.
No, and you're going to be at some point.
Absolutely.
At some point, they're going to make sure that you get some private attention.
Absolutely.
That's just, that's part of the game.
Yeah.
But so you get through your basic and AIT, your one station unit training. Now it's time to go to airborne school.
Yep.
So, and you're still at Benning. So you just go across the street, basically.
Hop on a cattle truck and over you go.
You go through jump school.
Yep.
I'm guessing uneventful.
Well, I was actually recycled after my first week of jump school because I got through that first week,
which is ground week.
And literally that Friday of ground week, I forget if it was my left knee or my right knee, one of my knees, like literally swelled up the size of a softball.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so they made me go to sick call because I'm like, I don't want to go to sick call.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So they took me down to, I forget the name of the hospital that's down there. They took me down there because sick call was over. Mm-hmm. And this was something that was, they deemed to be an actual like medical, thing that needed to be looked at. Turned out it was just kind of soft tissue damage or whatever. So I spent the next week, basically sitting on the desk, but they made me sit out and they recycled me. So I was basically, a week behind all the rest of my peers that had gone through jump school.
I got you. They healed a week off to heal the knee
exactly.
up, and then boom, now you're going through.
Yep.
It'd be, was it Tower Week?
It's ground week, tower week, jump week.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. And then you go through Tower Week, and then you go through jump week.
Yep.
And
so and everything
now you
was
got your, now
pretty
you got
uneventful. We had a guy who, while I was in jump school, and I don't remember the exact particulars on everything, but we had a kid that basically he was coming out of the air. He had a full streamer, which to those that don't know, a streamer is basically your chute does not open, and it looks like basically just a big thing, streaming behind it like a streamer as you're falling. And as you remember, when you're in jump school, you jump from, I think it's 1,250 feet is the jump altitude that they drop you at. And your main parachute, which is a T-10 Charlie parachute, which is like what most people remember the old umbrella style chutes.
Yeah, round.
Yeah, that's what you jump in jump school. That's what we jumped in jump school, I should say. It was streaming behind him, and he pulled his reserve parachute pretty close to the ground, and it caught right about the time he hit the ground. And he kind of bounced. Of course, everybody's running out to him.
Right.
And by the time they get there, he's picking up his chute and he's, getting it all, picked up and put together. And they're like, dude, you all right? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. Why? You bounced. I mean, so they had him checked out. He was fine. He had finished jump school. But what they ended up finding was they went through and his parachute actually had 550 cord, which is, the string that holds
the suspension lines.
Yeah. Tied around the base of his parachute. Now, it wasn't like an accidental, like it got, screwed up in the air and tied itself in a knot. Somebody had tied a piece of 550 cord around the base of his canopy of his parachute to keep it from opening. They went back to the riggers there in Fort Benning. And after they did like an initial investigation, they figured it all out. Basically, there was this one rigger that actually did that on purpose. And he told him, he's like, I just, curious to see what would happen, I guess. He didn't have a good reason. And they ended up charging it with attempted murder.
Yeah. Well, I remember there was one class, and I want to say maybe it was in the 80s, where one of the riggers went through and they packed it, but the suspension lines were cut.
Okay.
So when you jump and the static line pulls the chute, you just keep going. Yeah. And I think there was like 7 or 8 maybe that burned in, and then they got in trouble. I heard this again. Yeah. These could be Army rumors. Sure. You know how you hear that. But there's been incidents. The one thing I like about parachute riggers is that they make them, you got to jump.
Jump your own chute.
You got to jump and they'll go through and randomly.
Yep.
So, anybody that's listening to this, the people that rig the parachutes, they have to be airborne qualified, and that's what they do. Yeah, they rig parachutes, and then they got to go through, and they got to boom every once in a while pull this one, jump it.
That's one of the only MOSs, maybe the only MOS in the Army where you have to be jump qualified before becoming AIT certified. Your advanced individual training.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, you have to be jump qualified.
Well, it makes sense.
Yeah, but they ended up locking down the riggers after that on Fort Benning, and they pulled every single parachute, unpacked every single parachute, and repacked it to double check to make sure there was nothing else wrong with any of them. And they had to fly down parachutes from Fort Bragg for us to finish jump school.
Holy cow!
Yeah, so
that's wild.
Yeah.
Now, I had 4 roommates, or there's 4 of us in a room.
Yeah.
2 of them had to pull reserves.
Yeah.
And I remember going into that last jump thinking, 3rd time's a charm.
Yeah.
It's going to be me. You know how you just, know. But,
well, when you're there, I mean, for anybody who's never jumped out of an airplane, now there's a difference obviously between free falling and what we do in the Army. Most people do in the Army, which is, static line.
Right.
A static line, you're hooked to the aircraft. As you go out of the aircraft, it pulls your chute for you for, halo, high altitude, low opening jumps, or, for regular, free fall type people, civilian rolled or whatever. Those are the ones that free fall and you pull your own chute. But for us, for static line jumps, the T-10 Charlie parachutes, it took approximately...
Or MC-1-1 Bravo.
Which I jumped into those in Panama. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But that T-10 Charlie parachute, it takes about 4 full seconds to open. So you jump out, you have your good body position, you count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. By the time you hit 4,000, it should be opening. You should feel the shock of your parachute opening.
It's a way to get as many men out of an aircraft onto the battlefield as quickly as possible.
Yes, and with as little air time as possible to
Correct.
keep you from being shot out of the air.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you hit hard.
You do.
I remember
fall approximately 16 feet per second.
Yeah, you've got a good story on that we'll get to.
Yep.
About the one when you got your leg hung up, on a jump, or you hit the frame, or we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that one.
Okay, so now you graduate airborne school.
Yep.
You come home on leave.
Yep.
Say hi to the family. Hey, I'm an Army man now. I'm cool. I got these jump wings. We're strutting around like banty roosters like we do.
Of course.
And then now you go and you report to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to be a member of the 82nd Airborne All-Americans.
Yep.
As an infantry.
Yep.
So tell me what it's like when you are the new guy coming into the barracks and they welcome you with open arms.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it was one of those things where you just kind of fell in. You just kind of...
It wasn't that bad for you.
It really wasn't that bad
Okay.
because you have to keep in mind, it's perspective is everything, right? You come from basic and AIT where your entire day is planned out for you. Everything. You don't move without somebody being under somebody's thumb. Then you go to airborne school, right? And so you've gone from one building essentially to another building on the same post for us. And all of a sudden you're working during the week, but then you have weekends off. And you're like, okay, a little bit of freedom. This is kind of weird. It feels weird because you've spent so long, in basic training in AIT,
right?
That it feels weird to you. But then you go from that to the 82nd Airborne Division, or your, wherever your active duty post is at, and now all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is just your 9-to-5 job, unless you're in the field or you have a special duty that you're doing or whatever. This is just your regular job, and you have weekends off, and you have evenings off, and you have all this other stuff. So it's even more odd.
That's a very good point. I hadn't really thought about that because it's been a lot of years. But you're right. When you first get to your duty station, it's like you feel like you're doing something wrong.
Yep. The first thing you do is you find the chow hall.
Yep.
The second thing you do is you find the closest shop at or PX.
Right. Yes.
That's what you do. That's what everybody does because that's your world up to that point.
Right.
Your military world up to that point, I should say.
And then it's like, okay, well, you got to be back Monday morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's your first Friday, and it's like
5 o'clock wake up for PT, and you're like, okay.
What am I going to do?
Yeah.
It's like I have nobody yelling at me or telling me what to do for the next couple of days. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So you get there, and takes you a while, like anything. You're the new guy. You're getting treated like dirt, which is what pretty much happens.
Yep. And I ran through kind of the whole infantry gamut, I guess you could say, of positions. You start out as your basic rifleman, which back then we had the M16A2s. And then from there, I went to an M203 gunner,
which is a grenade launcher, 40 millimeter.
40 millimeter grenade launcher that's mounted on basically the bottom of your M16. You're a grenadier, basically, is what you are. And then from there, I moved up to the M249 Saul, which is a squad automatic weapon, which is a belt-fed machine gun that shoots a 5.56 millimeter round. And then where I was at within my company at that point in time, they made me an armorer. They made me an assistant armorer. They had pulled me from my platoon. Well, I was still part of my platoon, but I was assisting the primary armorer for the company and helping basically issue weapons and, dealing with, weapons maintenance and what have you. And he ended up falling out for some reason. He got injured, and I somehow became the primary armorer for my company, which was something I didn't really want to do because
so I bet that sucks.
It did suck, and it pulled me from my infantry squad, which as an infantryman, that's where you want to be.
Yeah, you want to be doing
you want to do your
stuff.
job. Yeah,
right,
exactly. That's where you want to be. So I didn't really care for that very well, but there was a platoon sergeant who was part of the M60 platoon, and he came down one day. He was talking to me, and he's like, "Hey," he goes, why'd you want to do this? And I was like, "I don't want to do this." I said, "I'm miserable here." He's like, "You ever thought about coming back up and wanting to rejoin the squad?" I'm like, "Heck yeah,
all the time."
So he talked to my first sergeant. And he pulled me into the 60 squad, and so I was an assistant gunner for the 60 squad for a while there in the 82nd Airborne Division.
Now, how did you like being a machine gunner?
It was awesome. I loved it. I mean, it was cool. I mean,
that was back when it was the M60, which we called the Pig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The M60
308 or 7.62 by 51.
Yep. Belt fed.
Yeah. That's a bigger gun. Yeah.
So it's pretty heavy. And again, for those that have never been in the military, don't know, you have different pieces to it. You have your, the weapon itself, and then you have your tripod, and you have what they call your T&E. Which is your transverse and elevation, mechanism that you put together, and then it's essentially a suppression by fire weapon, for the infantry squad. If you're engaging somebody, the M60 gets up, you throw it down, you lay down suppressive fire while your attack element moves.
Is there one AG, one assistant gunner per gun? Okay,
yeah.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
So basically, it's well, I guess it's considered a crew served weapon.
Yeah, it is. Well.
Yeah. I mean, kind of.
Well, you also have your ammo bearer as well. So I guess technically there would be three.
Okay.
But really what you do is you spread. Well, I mean, there's a lot that, we did in the military, but like when we got locked down to go to Haiti, we had, belts of 60 rounds in our, rucksacks, as well as, like a mortar round for our mortar company. And our, you spread the ammunition across everybody so that not one person's bearing all that weight.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, that
was. Were you, I didn't know you were en route to Haiti.
Yeah, we got locked down in '94. So in Haiti, they had basically a coup.
Right.
For all intents and purposes.
Which they're having right now.
Yeah, I know. As interesting how history repeats itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they had, this coup, whoever it was, that had taken over the country, and they purported to allow a democratic election for somebody to come over and, take their presidency or, whatever their form of government is down there. And they had this election, but they weren't allowing this guy to come in. Right.
He was elected, but they're not letting him. Right.
Yeah. They didn't want to relinquish power. So my unit got locked down to go into this invasion into Haiti. And of course, this is supposed to be, the first combat jump since, whatever. So it was kind of irritating because, again, as an infantry squad, member,
right,
you need all your people. You rely on the guys to your left and your right. They're your family, right? That's who brings you home. You do your job, they do their job, and you bring each other home. That's it. So considering this was such a high profile thing, and of course now we're in the age of, media and embedded reporters and all this other stuff.
Right.
We had a CBS news crew that was going to be on our aircraft videotaping us as we went out of the aircraft. But we had also had some staff members who had replaced various riflemen within the infantry squad so they could get their little mustard stain, their little jump stain on their.
Oh, wow.
So it really that was one of those things that really irritated me about and again, in my perception at that point in time, it was the 82nd Airborne Division, but I'm sure that's the sort of thing that goes on everywhere.
Right.
You know, anytime anybody could take the opportunity to get that combat jump or to get some sort of a badge or get some sort of an award or whatever.
Napoleon once famously said, you can get a man to do anything for a beautiful piece of ribbon. I'm paraphrasing. But
Yeah.
They want the shiny things on their chest. Look what I did.
So, you know, and ultimately we got locked down. We got on the aircraft. We were on our way down, and we got told to turn around and come back. Right, because they were like, all right, they heard the 82nd Airborne Division was coming. They're going to take it by force. And they said, no, we don't want that. We don't want bloodshed. Go ahead and bring your guys in off the boats and go ahead. You can have it. Right. So we were told to turn down. Now, I don't know about you. You went to jump school. You have your jump school jumps. Do you have any other jumps other than that?
No.
Okay.
Because when I got to, I was in an airborne unit.
Okay.
I get out of airborne school. I get to an airborne unit.
Mm-hmm.
It was whenever the 509th had just come down from Fort Chaffee, Arkansas to Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Okay.
And it had been a while since those guys had jumped. So they had what they called pay hurts.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So these guys got to jump to stay on status. So I got manifested, and I kept getting bumped. I get manifested for another jump. I get bumped. I get manifested. I go through this for a while, and then all of a sudden it comes down. All the FOs are off jump status.
Oh, okay.
And we're like, what? They're saying, well, you guys aren't integral, or you're not organic to the 509th. Well, we were. It was our patch. We were 509th. But this was during when Bill Clinton was drawing down the military.
Yeah.
And so we weren't on jump status for so long. Well, then right before I got out, the FOs went back on jump status. But I had a broken hand.
Okay.
And so I was on a profile, and then it was just I'm the only guy you will ever meet that served I was in the 509th for 1 year. I was in 1 year.
Yeah.
I served in an airborne infantry unit and never had a jump.
Man, that sucks.
It sucks.
That's horrible. Man.
Yeah, because I'm a cherry.
So, and I don't know if you ever got to this point when you were in jump school. So, because again, jump school, everything it's like a fire hose, everything coming at you. You're just trying to drink what you can out of this fire hose and catch what you can. But,
right.
There's so much information, so much stuff going on. Anyway, when you get into jumping, there's a certain point within the process of that jump, and it's different for everybody, right? From, drawing your parachute, to getting your parachute on, to having, your jump master check your chute, to waiting on the flight line, to boarding the aircraft, to flying in the aircraft, to the stand up, hook up, shuffle to your door,
right,
to the green light, to going out. To somewhere within that process, you reach a point to where you want nothing but that endorphin rush that you get when you go out of that aircraft. Right. It's like a drug. It really is. There's a certain point, and again, it's different for everybody.
Right.
But there's a certain point within every jump that a person gets to that's all they want. They want that feeling. I was already to that point during that Haiti thing. So when they told us to turn around and come back, here, I'm 19 years old. I'm wearing enough, I have enough ammo strapped to my body to, fend off a small army.
Right.
I was an M203 gunner at the time.
Right.
I had HE rounds, high explosive rounds on me. I had flechette rounds on me. I had single smoke. Plus I was carrying fragmentation grenades, plus my basic M16 load. Plus I had,
you are literally loaded
I had
for war.
M60.
You probably weighed 200 and...
Yeah, my LBV at the time, I think, weighed roughly 65 pounds, and my rucksack was like 110 or 120.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Which is heavy.
So anybody thinking about that, not only do you have your own body weight and your rifle and everything else, you're carrying an extra 200 pounds or more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was at that point, here you are, 19 years old, enough, ammunition to take out a small country. You're going to invade this country. And they say, stand down. I had so many emotions at that point in time. I was angry. Not to sound like, I'm the type of person that,
it's not a bloodlust
It's not a
thing.
warmonger type thing.
No.
Yeah, it's just, there's certain things that happen during certain processes, and I had hit that process, they hit that point.
You have to. You're getting ready to go into combat.
Yeah.
You're getting ready, and the mental steps that you take to prepare yourself for what you're about to see, the bloodshed.
Absolutely.
I might die. My buddy might die. I might get a leg blown off. What? Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have, PSYOP that's there, when you're drawing all this, stuff, whatever, they're blasting music through their, blasting Metallica and stuff, like getting you all pumped up. And, I mean, just,
Sure.
It's just, it was such, I mean, I'm sure it was a blessing in disguise because, you go back later on and they go and they evaluate where your drop zone was at and whatever. I mean, our drop zone was supposed to be a freshly cut cane field. I mean, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, that would have been a lot of injuries there.
Yeah, absolutely. But, so again, it's probably a blessing in disguise, but
Sure.
it's one of those things you were at that point that you were just like, oh, you were so angry at everything because you needed that, Again, it's like a drug addict.
It's all built up, but there's no release.
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't get that release of war.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So now you're going back to Bragg.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we go back to Bragg and, after that, again, this was kind of during that point in time where, I'd gotten transitioned over to, being the company armorer and I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing and that sort of thing. And the opportunity came up to go to Panama.
Jungle school?
No,
Okay.
Not jungle school, but Panama, the country, as a rotation to help supplement the MPs that were down there doing basically gate guard and things like that, your L&O rotation.
The 173rd Airborne unit was down there then, I believe, correct? I think they might be in Italy now. Was it the 173rd that was down there?
No, they were a non-airborne unit, but there were some special forces guys that were down there.
Okay.
And that'll take us into the MC1-1 Bravo
Okay.
story. But so it was, I was 1st Battalion, 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment is what I was in.
Okay.
At the time, I was in Alpha Company.
Okay.
Okay. Charlie Company was the only company out of our battalion that was going to be going down to Panama, and they needed people to fill their numbers because they were kind of short. So,
All right.
Me and a good friend of mine, William Utley, he was a guy from Oregon, we volunteered to go. So we got transferred over to Charlie Company. This was 1995.
Okay.
And we got sent down to Panama, which of all the places that I've been, it's kind of a toss up between Panama and Germany as to which is my favorite, but Panama was really fun.
Yeah.
We were only down there for 4 months. We had 3 different things that we did while we were there. We did an L&O cycle, a law and order cycle, which is where we stood gate guard. We had our ITC cycle, which is our intensive training cycle, which is where we went out and did our infantry stuff out in the jungle. Mm-hmm. And then we had a night ops rotation that we did, which basically we would go out in 3-man teams and we would go onto the American areas of Panama, like good grief, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. I'm having a brain fart. Anyway, we would go out in 3-man teams at night and we would try to catch Panamanians sneaking onto the American, side and basically stealing stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a real world mission.
Yeah,
then.
absolutely.
Okay.
And we did, it was every 2 weeks you would rotate through. Fort Amador was the place I was thinking of.
Okay.
It's right down there next to the causeway by Noriega's house on the Pacific side of the Panama Canal, which for people who are geographically challenged, if you look at the Isthmus of Panama, you think, Pacific side would be the west side, Atlantic side would be the east side, but it's not. The Isthmus of Panama goes down and it turns and it runs east-west. So the south side of Panama Canal is the Pacific side. The north side of the Panama Canal is the Atlantic side.
Right, okay.
We were on the Pacific side. Where our barracks were, you could see the Miraflores locks, which is the first set of locks on the Pacific side of the Panama Canal.
Oh, locks. Okay.
Locks,
Yeah.
So you could look out, like we would be sitting there like on our, time off day. And again, now at this point, I'm 20 years old and, in the military, it's, home rules, right? So whatever, host country rules are, that's what you go by. So 20 years old, I could drink.
Right.
Legally drink.
Right.
So we'd be sitting there, playing spades in our, barracks room or something like that. And we'd be, imbibing or whatever. And you look over and you see like this cruise ship over the Miraflores locks, and they're kind of waving at you. I mean, they're far away, but they're close enough you can actually see people. Right.
Wow.
And so you're like waving at them, whatever. And then, you're sitting there playing. You look over 15, 20 minutes later, and all of a sudden they're like 7 stories higher than what they were just a second ago, or minutes ago.
Because they're
flooding the locks. Yeah. It was just a neat thing. I got a chance to go snorkeling down there at Taboga Island, and it was
once again, it's a lot different than growing up in the Midwest.
Yep.
And you're growing up in cornfields and bean fields, and
And, you talk about pay hurts. Well, when I was down there, I was a pay hurt. I hadn't, jumped in, so to stay on jump status, you have to have one jump within a 3-month period, right? So you could feasibly go up to 6 months without jumping, because if you jump at the beginning of that 3-month period and then you go to close to the end of the next 3-month period, that's 6 months. So you could feasibly go up to 6 months without jumping,
right?
Before you become really a pay hurt and you need to jump,
right?
And I was a pay hurt when I was down there. So what we did, I mentioned they had a special forces unit down there at the time. Those of us that were pay hurts got the opportunity to jump. So we were jumping with the special forces guys. The parachutes we were using were the MC-1-1 Bravo parachutes, which again, for people who don't know what that is, that looks like the big umbrella chute, like the T-10 Charlie, but it looks like you took a knife and cut basically slits along the back.
I jumped one in airborne school.
Okay. And they have toggles. So what happens is with that parachute, most parachutes, with the T-10 Charlie parachute, you can't steer those. You can pull what they call a riser slip, which will basically slide you left, slide you right, slide you front, slide you back, depending on how you pull your slip. But for the MC-1-1 Bravo parachute, there's a toggle, and those ribbons that are cut in the back of that parachute essentially
looks like a hole.
Yeah, propel you forward at about 7 miles an hour, roughly, I think is what it was. I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah.
But when you pull one of those toggles to the left or to the right, you can do a 360-degree turn.
That's how you turn.
At about 10 seconds, roughly, give or take. It takes about 10 seconds to do a full turn. So we're jumping an aircraft we never jumped before, which was, I think it's a C-27 or C-26, I forget what it is. It looked like the C-130, which is the 4-prop aircraft, right?
Right.
It looked like that, only it had 2 props, one on each wing.
Okay.
So basically it looked like a miniature C-130.
Right.
And it had about half the capacity of a C-130. And when they jump these aircraft, they jump one side at a time. Like they'll jump one side and they'll do a pass and they'll come down and then they'll do the other side.
Okay.
The other thing that's different about it is with most aircraft, when you jump, the jump master, when he gives you the green light to go, he stays in the aircraft. Everybody goes. He collects all those static lines as they come by. And then once they're done, he checks, make sure there's no tow jumpers. He looks, make sure the aircraft's empty, and then he goes out after you.
Right.
With this one, jump master went out first. Green light came on about 30 seconds out. We were actually flying in from over the ocean. Our marker to jump was the beach, and we were jumping into a grass field that, if I remember in my mind's eye, it was about knee-high to waist-high grass.
All right.
Beautiful, right?
Right.
The day we were jumping, perfect clear sky, nice and warm.
It's going to be a great
slight
jump.
breeze, flying. Yeah, perfect jump, right? So they told us when we're exiting these aircraft, they're like, you're jumping MC-1-1 Bravo parachutes. You guys are the 82nd Airborne Division. You guys are used to going nuts and butts out the aircraft, right? I mean, you empty the aircraft as fast as you can to get everybody in the air as fast as you can. They said, don't do that. You have plenty of time. Space it out. Get like a full second between you guys as you go out. I think there was only maybe 20 people you're going out at the time.
Right.
But they said, take your time getting out the aircraft, right? So here we are flying. We're the first to go out. The Special Forces guys are going to do the second pass. And we're coming in over the ocean. Jump master standing. He's looking out, hanging out the door. We're coming up to the beach. Green light goes on. He checks, makes sure we got green light. He's like 30 seconds. He gives us a 30-second sign. And we're looking, watching. All of a sudden he looks, checks the green light. And he's like, follow me. And I happened to look over at the Special Forces guy. And I saw one of them tap his buddy on the leg. He's like, watch this. We emptied that aircraft in about 5 seconds. I mean, right on top of each other on that aircraft, And so, we were actually pretty high. In the 82nd Airborne Division, whenever we jumped, we jumped from about 750 feet is where we jumped from during training.
Right.
Which is lower than jump school, which is 1,250 feet.
Right.
This jump, if I remember correctly, was closer to like 2,000 feet. I mean, it's pretty high up.
Oh, wow.
So we had a lot of
Okay.
airtime.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sitting there and I'm looking around. It's like, man, this is a beautiful jump, right? I'm just kind of staring around and looking, and all of a sudden Montgomery, that guy that I was talking about, basic training,
Right.
I hear him say, "Smile, knothead." And I look up and he's kind of behind me and above me, but he's kind of starting to come over the top of me. He has a camera in his hand. Well, as you know, from being a jump school, you can steal a guy's air.
You don't want to steal somebody's air.
Right. And I could see he was going to go over the top of my chute. And I'm like, dude, you better check yourself. And I pulled actually a toggle into him to try to get under him as fast as I could.
Right.
And as he came across the top, his chute goes, whoosh, it flutters. And I heard him go, oh,
yeah.
And he pulls a slip the other direction. But I didn't, it was still in his air all the way. But yeah, it was a close call.
Yeah.
So I'm coming down. I'm looking, okay. And of course, your parachute landing fall, right? Feet and knees together,
Right.
knees slightly bent, hit your 5 points of contact, balls of your feet, your thigh or your calves, thighs, buttocks, push up muscle, right? And every time, because when you hit hard, you roll.
Right.
So I'm going in, I turn into the wind, I'm coming down, and I hit this grass, feet and knees together, and I'm like, whew, and I'm kind of standing, and my mind's thinking, fall. So I kind of fall over and do my PLF, and it's like, standing landing, right? I mean, it was the most perfect jump I ever had.
Right. Yeah.
The most perfect jump that I ever had.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
What was your worst?
Okay, so I had actually a couple that were pretty bad. Not the worst, but the next to worst was we were coming back from Fort Pickett, Virginia. This is when I was the armorer, so I was attached to headquarters platoon at that point in time. Some of us were payhurts. Again.
Right.
And so what they had done was they had kind of searched around with the Air Force, and they had found a C-130 that was, it was 141, I think. I forget which aircraft we jumped at that point in time. Anyway, they were flying.
Which I got to jump both of those too.
Yeah.
So for a guy that's only, had my I got to jump 2 chutes and 2 different birds. I jumped at 130 and 141. So
that's awesome.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It is
it's
cool.
awesome.
That 141. Well, I think you're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So anyway, we what they failed to do was realize that they knew that these aircraft were not going to be landing at Fort Pope, or Pope Air Force Base, which is basically the sister base to Fort Bragg. That's that we were supported by the Air Force. Obviously, that's who dropped us, for the 82nd Airborne Division. But these aircraft were not going back to Pope; they were going on to somewhere else in Kentucky, I think. So they had to drop us. But what they didn't do, they didn't check the weather. It was raining, it was gusting wind, and they still put us out of the aircraft.
Oh man.
Over Fort Bragg. And when I hit on that one, I landed on my canteen, and it more or less popped my hip out of place.
Oh boy.
When I hit, I mean, it was painful. It hurt. Of course I kind of, pushed and wiggled, whatever, kind of got it popped back into place. And, I kind of limped around for a while after that, but that was not a great jump. The other one, the really bad jump that I had, what you were talking about the, getting caught up in the riser, which it wasn't getting caught up in the riser, but what we were doing is at the time.
So this is your worst jump.
This is my worst jump. So when you go through airborne school originally on a C-130, when they tell you to exit the aircraft, they tell you to jump up 6 inches and out 36 inches, right? Jump up and out at a 90-degree angle.
Right.
That's how you exit the aircraft. On a C-141, which has 4 jet engines on either side, it's bigger than a C-130. When you exit the aircraft, you exit at a 45-degree angle and you just step out and drop.
It just sucks you out, basically.
Yeah. So what they were doing is they were experimenting with how to exit aircraft, because this was also, if I remember correctly, the point in time when they were doing the C-17 was coming out, and they were experimenting with C-17 jumps, and they were trying, because C-17s were having an issue with paratroopers basically coming under the aircraft as they exit and crossing and getting tangled up.
What they call a high altitude entanglement.
Yes.
So, which is really bad.
Yes, it is. It's very, very bad. So they had told us whenever we were jumping this aircraft, we were jumping to C-141, and they said, you're going to exit this time like you do a C-130. You're going to turn 90 degrees. You're going to jump up 6 inches, out 36 inches, right? So that's what I did. We're coming over, and all we were doing is what they call basically a jump and assemble, or a hop and pop, whatever you want to call them. We weren't going out to the field. All we were doing is we were jumping, we were turning our chutes.
Nope,
and we
you
were
probably didn't
coming
even
back
have a
to
full combat load
Nope.
or nothing. Just
not at all.
We called them Hollywood jumps.
Yeah, it was a Hollywood jump,
Right,
exactly. It was at nighttime, but we were just going to jump and assemble on Sicily drop zone, which is a drop zone we drop all the time. Familiar with it, knew it like the back of our hands, right? So anyway, we're going over Sicily drop zone. It's nighttime. We get the green light. We start going out the aircraft. I jump up 6 inches out, 36 inches, have my good body position coming out the door. Well, as I jump, the wind catches me and it swings my feet above my head. So as I'm falling, of course, I have my chin tucked like you're supposed to, and I'm looking at the aircraft basically flying away from me. So I'm basically inverted in the air as my risers are coming out, as the static line is pulling my risers out of my chute. My risers come over my head on either side of my ears, basically, and as I'm falling away, they start to twist. So essentially, I have my risers twisting in front of my face as it's starting to pull my parachute out of this pack. And my first instinct was, I need to get my face out of the way.
Oh, man, yeah, this is going to be bad.
I threw my head back, and as soon as I threw my head back, it caught air, and then one of those risers just whipped right past my face, caught air, gave me whiplash real bad. I'm coming down. I pull my riser, slip to try to, keep myself from, I don't know if I was left or right, whatever it was. But anyway, when I came down, I hit feet first and it popped my feet up again over my head. And I smacked my head on the ground as it came down, and it basically pinched the nerves coming out of my neck and temporarily paralyzed me.
Oh, man.
I couldn't feel my hands. I'm looking down at my canopy release assemblies because, again, on your harness, you have a thing called a canopy release assembly.
Yeah, you got to pop them, especially if it's windy, because it'll drag you across the drop zone.
Exactly.
Right, so you got to get them popped.
That's what that canopy release assembly does. It releases one side of your parachute, so the parachute collapses, right? And so I'm looking down. I'm thinking, okay, canopy release assembly, let's go. And I'm like looking down. My arms aren't moving. And I'm starting to get dragged across the drop zone, like you said. Well, because of that, it was a pinch. It wasn't a permanent thing. It basically it numbed my arms to the point where I couldn't feel them, but I could start to move them again. And I looked down. I grabbed one of my canopy release assemblies. I popped it. I was able to get it done, but it took all my strength to do it because I couldn't feel my hands. I got up, got my chute put away, whatever, and now that you say that, it was not a Hollywood jump. I did have my rucksack because there was a guy from my unit that was passing me, and I said, "Hey man," I said, "I'm disoriented." I was like, "Where's our AA, our assembly area?" He's like, "Follow me." I said, "Okay." And again, this is Sicily drop zone. We've dropped this thing a million times. We know it like the back of our hands, and right. I'm disoriented. I have no idea where I'm at. So I get there.
I'm sure you were concussed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was. Yeah. It ended up being diagnosed as a concussion too. But he gets me to our assembly area. I find my roommate, which was Bill Utley at the time, again, the guy that I went to Panama with. And I was like, dude, I smacked my head hard. I was like, I'm hurt. And he's like, all right. He goes, let me get our squad leader. So I got our squad leader. He came back, told him what happened. And he's like, all right, well, do you have your air items? This is why I remember that I was actually jumping my ruck, because your air items, what it is you have 3 things that are assigned to you as a paratrooper that you personally are assigned for. And this is not just, your rucksack or whatever, but it's your H harness, your quick release assembly, your QRA, and your lowering line, right? And so your QRA, once you get out of the aircraft, you're about 100 feet above the ground, you hit your QRA, you pop that thing. What that does is it drops your rucksack below you on your lowering line, which is attached to your H harness. And so that thing hits the ground before you do. So you're not landing with all this extra gear on you when you hit. Well, what I would do before every jump is I would take a piece of 550 cord and I would tie it around the grenade pouch of my LBV. And then whenever I would hit the ground, as I was putting my chute up, I would take my air items. I would take that piece of 550 cord. I would tie it together and I'd slide it in the top flap of my rucksack. That was just what I did.
Right.
That's how I did it. my squadron was like, he's like, all right. He goes, do you have your air items? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't remember putting them up. And so I was like, let me check. So I went and I looked at my top flap of my rucksack. Sure enough, they were there. Training, right? Just you revert back when you're not thinking to training.
Exactly.
So anyway, I end up the medic comes over and he told my roommate, he's like, yeah, wake him up every 20 minutes or every 30 minutes throughout the night. Make sure he doesn't slip into a coma because he's had a head injury, and have him come to sick call the next morning. So I did. They put me on like a 30-day profile and what have you. And,
Right.
you know, which I've got lingering issues from that the VA is taking care of me on, which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely the worst jump that I ever had.
They had a kid in the 509th burn in up at Chaffee right before they got, and I had buddies that were on that jump. It was a night jump.
Yeah.
And they talked about some of them were like on the other end of the drop zone, but when he burned in, they said that you could hear it. It just the sound of that,
Yeah.
of his body, just horrible.
Yep.
People don't realize even in peacetime, jumping out of an airplane with equipment, it's dangerous, and people get broken ankles, broken legs, dislocated hips, dislocated concussions, dislocated shoulder, whatever. I mean, you get beat up.
And not only that, I mean, there's other things that can happen too, like being a towed jumper. That means you're being towed by the aircraft. Your chute doesn't open properly, you get caught up on a piece of equipment, whatever, and you're actually being towed by the aircraft, getting smacked up against the side of it, whatever. Yeah.
And then if you're conscious, they cut you loose. And if not, I always heard they foam the runway and land with you.
Yep.
Try to pull you in if they can't get you in. And then
that's right.
And then you're going to be getting drugged. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, that's why you get hazardous duty pay for being in an airborne unit and being on airborne status,
Yeah. I had a pretty cool small world story too when I was down in Panama. So
what story?
Small world story.
Okay. All right.
So here we are, we're off,
right?
Off duty. And there's a place down in Panama City, Panama, called My Place. And it was just a little hole in the wall bar, and you could pay $10 to get in, and they would give you $7 of monopoly money basically back. So basically $3 cover charge, but they wanted to make sure you spent money there. And for that $7, you could get like 2 pictures of Cerveza Panama and like 2 Long Island ISTs. Right. So, okay. So I'm standing in the line down there, right? And we're waiting to get in. And, normally I'm a pretty laid back dude. I don't, I'm not a big fighter, and, I'll do what I got to do.
Right.
But, we're standing in line, and this guy keeps on, he's a couple guys, a couple people from me, keeps on staring. I keep on like looking, I keep on catching him staring at me. And I'm like, finally, I'm like, all right. I'm like, dude, I was like, what are you looking at? I was like, what's, he's like, man, he's like, I'm not starting nothing with it. I'm not, he said, you look really familiar. He goes, where are you from? And I said, we're from Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He's like, no. He goes, I mean, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Shelbyville, Illinois. Why? And he goes, have you ever played Taylorville in basketball? And I said, well, my freshman and sophomore year, we played, AB basketball against him. And he's like, that's where I know you from. He goes, my aunt lives in Taylorville, Illinois. And he goes, I've seen you play basketball before. We are in Panama, the country.
He remembered that?
And he remembered that. Yeah.
And it wasn't like he played against you and remembered you from that.
Correct. He visited his aunt in Taylorville, Illinois.
Well, you're talking about a memory.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Oh,
yeah. And like I said, and we only played him our freshman, sophomore year. They weren't even in our conference, so we didn't play him junior year. Yeah. So, yeah.
That is wild.
Just kind of a cool little small world story,
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap up your active duty time.
Sure.
You get out.
Yep.
You come back home. Well, you go into the National Guard.
Yeah. So
out of Mattoon.
Yep.
And you're serving infantry.
Yep. Second of the 130th in Mattoon, which they're not that anymore.
Right. But at the time, that was the infantry unit there.
Yep.
What was that like? The conversion.
At first, it was very odd because you're used to active duty, right? Where I didn't even talk to my platoon sergeant on active duty. I mean, you talk to your squad leader sometimes. Your team leader is who you communicate through up to your chain of command, but you never talk to your platoon sergeant. You certainly don't talk to your first sergeant unless you get called up in front of him, and that's not what you want to have done.
It's usually not good.
Right. So the first day I walk into the National Guard, they're like, oh, yeah, come in. I'll let you meet the first sergeant. I'm like, all right. So I come, walking in, of course, I snap to, parade dress, whatever, Specialist Nottingham reporting his order, first order. And he's like, Eddie's that crap. Eddie's that crap. My name's, whatever his name was, Bob or whatever. And I'm
Joe.
Like,
yeah.
And I'm like looking around and I'm like, looking at the corner of my eyes, like, man, am I on like some sort of like, show or something? I'm like, this is weird.
Yeah.
But that was my first taste of, okay, these guys aren't quite as strict. I'm not going to say professional, but they're not as strict as active duty are.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot more laid back.
Yeah. It was definitely a little bit different of a culture shock. So, I was a specialist at the time when I was there. I wasn't a sergeant yet. And the first year we were there, we went to, where we go, NTC, National Training Center in Death Valley, California.
Yeah, Fort Ord.
Is Ord or Irwin? Irwin.
No, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
They were basically what I did down at JRTC.
Yes.
Only they were like heavy, more.
Yeah, they were for the mechanized guys or whatever. Yeah.
So that unit, was that unit mechanized?
No.
Okay.
We were straight, but what we did was we supplemented the active duty guys down there that were playing the opposing force, the Op 4.
Oh, so you got to be Op 4.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I got to in JRTC too. I'll get to that here in a second as well.
All right.
So we get down there and they actually put me in a squad leader position, which is an E6 position. It's two ranks above,
right.
What I'm actually, my rank is.
Right.
And while we were down there, for our task force, it was called Task Force Angel. We were there to play the opposing force for an M1 Abrams unit that was getting ready to deploy. Right. They were coming together for the first time. They were like trying to get their comms all put together and what have you. So what we were doing is we were up basically in the mountains, around the bowl, and we were basically harassing them. Right. So for our task force, my particular squad actually got, and I don't remember the exact numbers, don't quote me, it's something like 4 of the 6 Abrams kills and 6 of the 10 armored
you guys
personnel.
were on it.
Yeah, we were on it. We did really well. So fast forward to when we're getting ready to leave to come home, and again, infantry, right? All dudes. That's what you're used to. People walking around in towels or flip-flops or whatever. I was taking a shower at the time, had my dog tags on, and all of a sudden they're like, formation, everybody fall out real quick. We're like, all right. So again, infantry, not thinking about it. I literally run outside in my flip-flops, my towel, and my dog tags. Right.
Which, no big deal. Right. Yeah.
We fall into formation, and all of a sudden here comes our first sergeant up with the sergeant major and our battalion commander and everybody else, and they're like, attention to orders, and they say it's an award ceremony is what it is, and we didn't realize this. I got called up in front of the company in flip-flops, a towel, and dog tags, and I got pinned an Army Achievement Medal because of what we had done during that.
So you get an AAM. Yeah. Where did they pin it? On your towel? Or they just hand it to you?
They pinned it to my dog tags. The commander comes walking by, and of course I salute him. He salutes me. He just kind of shakes his head. And he pins it to my dog tags and moves on to the next one.
That's good.
It was hilarious.
That is good. Yeah, those are one of those funny little stories. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we come back, and I think the following year we went to JRTC and we did the same thing, right? Yeah, we were playing the opposing force, did what you did. Right.
Yeah.
We were actually supplementing your old unit, I think.
Okay. Helping the 519th out. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were down there for 2 weeks. Of course, it was our annual training. And this was when I realized, and I don't know if you ever experienced this or not, but this is where I realized how efficient and lethal our Army is. Because when you're part of it and you're doing it, you're part of what's making it happen. You're not on the receiving end, so you don't really see the whole picture of what you're doing to whatever, right? We were down there and we'd been out in the field for maybe 7 or 9 days or something like that. We were getting ready to come back. We were about done with annual training. And it just so happened that the 82nd Airborne Division was down there training, right? So we were out in the woods. There was 2 of us with 3 of the opposing force, the guys who were stationed down there normally for JRTC. And we knew we were going to be getting pulled out either that day or the next day anyway. So when you're doing these exercises, for people who don't know, when you're training, you have a thing called kill cards. So whenever you have your laser tag equipment on, if you get killed, you pull out your kill card and it tells you what you are, whether you have a wound,
sucking chest wound, RTD would be return to duty,
yep.
leg blown off, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a scenario card is what it is.
Correct.
Right. So all of us had kill cards and we knew it because we're the National Guard and we were going to be leading anyway.
Right.
So, anyway, so we looked at our active duty counterparts there, and we're like, hey, look, you guys are going to be out here for a while anyway. So what we'll do is when these guys come moving through, because we had it was a company level 82nd Airborne Division infantry unit that was coming through. They were in their formation, moving through the wood line, and we could see that the edge formation was going to actually catch where our position was. We were just watching them. Most of them had walked by us; they didn't see us, and so we're like, "Look, you guys pop up, get out of here, and we'll stand and we'll take a stand. We'll try to shoot them, draw their fire, or whatever." So that's what we did. I had to do these guys. They got up. They put on, the RTO put on his radio and his ruck and everything, and they started hauling out. And we get up and we start pop, 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 pop. That's when I realized again how efficient and how aggressive we as a military are, because I watched those 82nd Airborne Division infantry guys and their fire movement, lay down their suppressive fire, lay down their assault, by fire. I mean, just. It was frightening how fast and how efficient it was. And this is just training. I mean, there's not real bullets, obviously.
Right.
These are, your miles years, but it was incredible to watch from the receiving end,
I would agree with you, but there's things to disrupt that too.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
And being on the other end of it, doing it, of course, again, I did it for a year.
Yes.
I did a 3-year enlistment, and I was in the big Army for 2 years and then 1 year, in an airborne infantry unit. So, I got to see both sides, I guess. But there are differences. This is one thing I will say, when people always, want to know about the Marine Corps versus the Army.
Right.
The one thing I will give the Marine Corps is I believe their standard as an infantry is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
If you are an infantry Marine, you are of this quality, and it's pretty much, I think, throughout the Marine Corps, they maintain that.
Yes.
The Army is not that way.
I agree.
The Army is 100% unit dependent.
Yes.
There are units in the Army that are as good as anything on the planet. And there are units in the Army that are a joke.
Yes, I agree.
At that time.
Yes.
Now, I don't know about now, because now everybody's, been in Afghanistan and, there's a lot of combat veterans.
Sure.
At that time when I served, that was my takeaway.
Right.
So if you get a right unit coming out of the 82nd Airborne Division, they are going to be lethal.
Yes.
The 25th Infantry Division was lethal.
Yes.
One of them that nobody ever talks about that I was impressed with was the 6th Infantry Division. They had an airborne unit out of Alaska that came down to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and it was the middle of the summer. I don't remember what the rotation was. And those guys impressed me because I thought they're going to get smoked. They're coming down, the humidity, the heat, and you know how bad Louisiana is. And I thought, man, these guys, and they performed. They were studs,
Good.
But again, and you know what? It all comes down to, and I'm sure you'll probably agree, your NCOs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's your NCOs, man.
They have good leadership.
They make the difference. But yeah, but I know what you mean. A good infantry unit moving correctly when you watch it is a thing of beauty.
Yes, it is.
It's intimidating. It's frightening, like you said, the lethality and how quick.
Yes.
So okay, so you get back from your JRTC stint, and you actually do a deployment with this unit, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So in 2000, we got deployed to Kuwait.
Okay.
And essentially what my platoon's mission was there was we were pulling guard on a Patriot missile site down there.
Okay.
At Al Asl in Kuwait. It was...
you say 2000, so this is prior to
9/11.
Yeah.
Yep. So we were there. That was probably one of the most tedious and boring and mind-numbing deployments I've ever been on, because when we got there, we had the RIP TOA, the relief in place transfer of authority, that happened down there was pretty much non-existent for us. We got bused to Al Asl, which is an air base down there. The Patriot missile site was along the exterior perimeter of that air base, but you accessed it from within the air base.
Okay.
So we went in, they're like, here's your hooches, drop your stuff. We're going to go feed you. And then we're going to take you out there to the Patriot missile site. All right, cool. So we didn't really have anything with us. We just, we ate, we hopped on these buses. They bussed us out there. And I can't remember. I don't even know if we set one full shift with those guys that we were replacing, or if they just threw us up there and that was it. I mean, we didn't really have any training on anything when we went in there. I mean, it was you sitting there.
There you go. See
Here
ya.
you go. Yep, we're out. And it was like, oh my gosh. What was bad about it was when we initially went out there, we like I said, we weren't prepared. We didn't have any of our stuff with us because we didn't realize we were going to be out there for that long.
Right.
And what we ended up doing was the rotation that we had. We were essentially like a 9-day rotation. We spent 7 days out there on the Patriot missile site.
Okay.
The 8th day we went back to the cantonment area. And when I say we're on the site, I mean we're on the site. We don't go back to cantonment at all.
Okay.
We're actually on that Patriot missile site. We would go back on like the 8th day to, do laundry, do whatever, hit like their little shop that they had there. But then we would come back out to the Patriot missile site to do site improvement, like, rebuild, refill sandbags, rebuild, around the bunkers and, do things like that. And then we would have basically 1 day off and then we were back out there on the Patriot missile site for another 7 days. And that was the entire.
How long were you deployed there?
So it was a total, if I remember correctly, of a 9-month deployment, but that includes pre-mobilization. And then
how long were you there in Kuwait?
I think we were in country for 6 months. If I
That had
remember
to have
correctly.
been horrible.
It was. It was by far.
I mean, that
worst
just
deployment
sounds
I've ever had.
boring. It's hot.
Yeah.
It just sucks all the way around.
Absolutely.
You were ready to get out of there.
Yes, it was not a fun experience down there.
So you get through that, you come home.
Yep, we get back right at the end of 2000. I can't remember if we got it back in. Gosh, I wanted to say we got back in either December or January of 2001. I don't remember. It was around that time frame.
Okay.
And then 9/11 happened
Right.
in 2001.
Right.
And we got redeployed again.
Okay. Where'd you go?
Within that year, we got redeployed to Germany this time, which that wasn't bad. Germany's a fun country.
Right.
But ultimately, we had been home for about a year, and then we redeployed again.
Okay.
So-
As a side note, and we'll come back to this.
Yes.
Did you see any of our families? Where our families from?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Had
Uncle
it-
John kept all that Westphalia province, and Bochum is the town. But
I am. We were in the Kaiserslautern area, which is kind of southwest near the border with France. But that was before. That's when I was still a little bit younger, and before I actually became interested
okay, yeah.
in the history of our family.
I got
and
you.
that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
you're wanting to.
You were always like kind of our history buff.
Yeah, yeah.
Guy.
Yeah.
Me, I was more of a go out and try to have fun.
Yeah. Okay. No, I get it. I get it.
Unfortunately.
At that age, I mean, who doesn't like to go out and have
Yeah.
some beer and eat some schnitzel? And, yeah, I mean,
exactly.
yeah.
But
So,
that was pretty fun. We had Pirmessons, Kaiserslautern, Rhino Ordnance Barracks, Lundstuhl. Those are all the places that we were pulling guard on, basically. We had our normal rotations. Sometimes you work during the day, sometimes you work during the night, but then on your days off, were your days off. They didn't mess with you.
back to the adventure part of the military. So at this point, you were how old?
2001. So I would have been, what is that? 36.
Probably 20. Well,
26. I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah.
I'd say
Right.
26.
So you're probably 20. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think, all right, you're in your late 20s, and by that point, because you joined the Army, not only all the jumping out of airplanes, cool equipment, getting to blow stuff up, shoot, which is awesome.
Yes.
You've been to Panama.
Yep.
Almost to Haiti.
Yep.
You've been to Kuwait.
Yep.
Now you're in Germany.
Yep.
And probably some countries in between stopping.
Oh,
Maybe,
yeah.
So you think about that.
While I was there in Germany, I took what they call an MWR trip, a morale, welfare, and recreation trip.
Okay.
And we did cave rappelling in Luxembourg.
Oh, man.
Luxembourg, of course, for people who don't know, is a small country in the heart of Europe.
Yeah.
And when you go there, basically what we did was we paid the money to the MWR, and they provided transportation there, all the equipment there, the guides. All we had to do was just pay for our food, basically. And when you drive into Luxembourg, of course, you see the Luxembourg Castle as you drive in. It's kind of they're part of their show. But the people in Luxembourg, they still have an attitude toward Americans there that they're very thankful for us liberating their country back to them during World War II.
Right.
Right. So everybody there is very kind to you. But when we went up there for this cave rappelling trip, they split us apart into two groups. So like, all right, you know, who has repelled before, who has never repelled before. You know, and I had done some repelling, but not really, you know, a whole bunch.
Right.
I'm like, all right, you know, we're going to have the people who've repelled before kind of help us with the people who haven't repelled before, but everybody's going to, you know, repel off this like little 10-foot cliff thing to kind of get your body position and how to brake and do a lot of other stuff. Cool. So while we're doing this, we're over here in this little area. I'm looking over and I can see this other guy. He's maybe, I don't know, maybe 50 yards away from us. And I see him with these ropes, right? And he's like tying off the trees and he's doing this and doing that, whatever. And he's kind of along this little cliff face, along this ledge that we're standing on. And
he's doing like fancy looking stuff.
Yeah, he's like tying stuff off, and I see him kind of messing around toward like where this, you know, ledge kind of meets, you know, this ledge or this rock face of the, you know, meets this ledge that we're standing on. He's kind of messing around down there and like looking at stuff and doing whatever. I'm like, what's this guy doing? And so after everybody goes through and they do their first little, you know, 10-foot, you know, cliff face rappel, everybody kind of gets it down how to do it. Like, all right, let's walk over here. So we walk over to where this guy had been standing, and I'm looking around. I'm like, I'm still not really quite getting what we're doing. Well, they hook us in, and I didn't realize it at first until I stepped up to it, but there is a crack in this, at the base of this rock face where this ledge that we're standing on meets it. And when I say ledge, it's like a path that goes by it. But there's a crack in this rock down at the base of it. And I look down and the rappelling ropes are going down into this crack. So they hook us in. We have to sit down on our side. We have to wiggle over, and then we drop down into this crack, into a 60-foot free rappel down into this cavern that just swallows your light of the headlamp that you're wearing. It was so cool.
That is unbelievable.
Yes, it was awesome. And we get down to the bottom. Of course, we get everybody collected, you know, together, and then the guides, you know, they kind of take us over to this one spot, and there's like another little place that we rappelled down, and then you start seeing, you know, cracks of light here and there, and you kind of walk by, you know, little openings in the cave and whatever, and we go explore this cave, and then, I mean, that was a trip. We ended up coming out down by where we had parked the buses, but it was so cool.
That is awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you got to do something like that, you know, you'll never, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
So you get done in Germany.
Yep.
You do your rotation over there.
Yep.
You come back to the United States. Now you're a National Guard. Now, where were you working at the time?
So
or were you going to school?
Yeah, I was kind of going to school. I never finished. I went to Lakeland College for a little while for criminal justice. I ended up not finishing because I was working at the time off and on. I started out kind of working at the factory in Shelbyville, the paper cup factory in Shelbyville.
I think we've all done a turn there.
Yeah. And then ultimately I ended up working at Blackhawk, which was they built road pavers. They're in Mattoon. They were bought out by Ingersoll Rand, and they ended up shutting the place down and moving it because that was their only union factory. Anyway, I ended up landing at Coles County Sheriff's Department. Okay. So I worked there for about a year and a half, roughly.
And this is the time whenever you got back from Germany. So you're still
Correct.
You're still in the Guard.
Still in the Guard. Yep. Kind of backtrack a little bit. I had been applying for police jobs around the area. I applied like Shelbyville and Effingham and Mattoon and, you know, places like that. I essentially lost the same job twice, 2 years in a row due to those deployments, the deployment to Kuwait and then the deployment to Germany, because I put in for the Mattoon City Police Department right before we deployed to Kuwait. I'd passed everything. I had made their list. I was like number 2 on their list. I was just basically waiting for the callback, like the you're hired callback type of thing, right?
Sure.
And that happened while I was at Mob Station. They had called back and they said, "Hey, we want you to come in for your, you know, administrative interview." You know, they were going to hire me basically. I was like, "Well, I can't. I'm deploying. Can you hold the position for me?" They're like, "Nope, we can't hold it, but check back with us when you come back." So when I got back from Kuwait, I tested again that following summer. I was first overall on their list after that testing, and then 9/11 happened. We deployed to Germany. The exact same thing happened. They called while I was getting ready to go to Mob Station and said, "Hey, come in for your final interview." You know, can't take it. Yeah. So I literally lost the same job twice, 2 years in a row due to deployments. So I worked at Coles County Sheriff's Department for a little while back in the jail. Going into 2003, I applied for the Decatur City Police Department. I'd gone through the testing there. And at this point in time, I had 10 years total in the military between my active duty and my National Guard time. Okay. Right. I was coming up on my ETS, my, you know, end of my term of service. And initially I had thought, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and re-enlist because I'm going to do 20 years, right? Might as well. I've got 10 years now. But then at the same time, it was like, okay, I lost the same job twice, 2 years in a row to deployments. I didn't want to take a chance of doing that again. So I went ahead and I
Which makes sense.
Yeah. So I went ahead, I got out in 2003 of the National Guard. Just so happens I actually tested for the Decatur City Police Department and I got the job.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So your plan worked.
Yeah, plan worked. So I was there for roughly 2.5 years. And then I went back because, again, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I still want to finish, my 20 years in the military because I'm halfway there. Why not?
Right.
So when I went to re-enlist, I went to the National Guard recruiter, which at the time, his name was Sergeant Horsley. And I happened to have been his team leader when he first got into the infantry back in Mattoon.
Ah, okay.
So I was like, hey, man, I'm looking to get back in, but I don't want to go back infantry. I was like, I want to do something different, man. I want something, not quite as much field time, whatever, something a little more fun.
I've done the tough guy stuff. Now it's time to tone it down a bit.
So he's like, well, he goes, I think they got a position open at the counter drug unit over here at the airport that flies the OH-58s. Let's go over and talk to them. So I went and talked to them, and they were looking for a mechanic for the OH-58s. Like, cool. So I put in for it. Well, in order, at the time, the military was phasing out the OH-58 helicopters.
All right.
So it was no longer a primary MOS school, meaning your military occupational specialty. They no longer sent you to an AIT, an advanced individual training, to work on OH-58 helicopters. It was what they call a transition course, right? So I had to have a primary aviation MOS first before I could transition into the OH-58s. So what they did was they sent me to Fort Eustis, Virginia, to be a Blackhawk helicopter mechanic. That was going to be my primary MOS.
Right.
Once I finished that school, then I came back. I worked.
How long was that AIT?
4 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 16 weeks.
And that completely different than anything else you had done prior in the military.
So different, yeah.
Night and day.
Well, and the other thing, too, on top of that, what was just kind of good for me was they let me retain my rank as a sergeant.
Oh, wow.
And so
those kids you're going through, they're looking up to you.
Yeah, those kids are at AIT, so they're fresh out of basic training going into AIT.
You're a sergeant. You got jump wings.
I got my own thing that I'm doing. Right. I don't have to jump through the same hoops they're jumping through.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was. So anyway, I get back from there, and then like 3-4 months later, they got me into the OH-58 mechanic transition school in Marina, Arizona, which is near Tucson. Past that, no problem. Started working on the OH-58s, and I went on what they call active duty special work orders, ADSW orders. So what I did was I took a leave of absence from the police department. I worked ADSW orders at the flight facility in Decatur for the OH-58 unit. I worked through the summer, and toward the end of that summer, they're like, hey, the state is hurting for pilots right now. Have you ever considered, filling out a warrant officer packet and try to become a pilot? I was like, I never really considered it, but I would, absolutely. Like, all right, cool.
Heck yeah.
They're like, we're hurting so bad. We're going to help you fill the paperwork out. All we need you to do is work on getting your security clearance. Okay. So I pull this form up, right? It's the SF-68 or something like that. I forget the actual form it is. Anyway, I'm looking at this thing, and of course it's pretty, exhaustive when it comes to information. And there was a question that I had about it, something that I needed filled out or something that I needed from the military as like a designator or something or whatever. Anyway, so I call over to Springfield and I was like, hey, this is who I am. I'm trying to fill out my security clearance for, to get a secret security clearance. I need this information. He's like, all right, well, what's your social security number? So I gave him my social. He's like, you already have a security clearance. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you have a secret security clearance. I was like, well, when was that granted? And he's like, oh, it was granted back in, 2000, whatever of 2006. What happened was Horsley hooked me up. He took my information. He transferred it onto that security clearance paperwork because he knew I was going to need it and submitted it. And I had a secret security clearance, didn't even know it.
I'll be darned. Yeah.
So
cool. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he hooked me up. Absolutely. I was like, dude, I called him. I was like, dude, I owe you, 12 back, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was cool.
Good, yeah.
Yeah. And it just basically, he had done it as part of my packet when I was getting back in the stuff that I was filling out. I didn't realize I was filling it out, but I was.
Yeah.
And he submitted it for me.
Well,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
So now, so now you're going to go
Flight school.
to flight school.
Yep.
All right.
Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Now, how long is it to teach you to be a pilot?
Okay, so the actual classes themselves that you have to go, because you have to go through Warrant Officer Candidate School.
Okay, well, let's get through that.
Yeah.
So which do you first?
Okay, so first you do walks, Warrant Officer Candidate School.
Okay, so now you're going from, so anybody that's not been in the military, basically you have enlisted and you have officers.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's something kind of in between, which are called warrant officers.
Unicorns.
The unicorns, that's right. You never see them. What do? We don't know. They're here, they're there. And it's basically where there are certain specialized MOSs that you kind of have to be an expert on that requires more technical style training. And that's where your warrant officers come in.
Yep.
So you're an NCO, a non-commissioned officer, but now you have to go through your warrant officer school.
Yep.
I've heard that's very hard.
It is. This is my opinion. I don't want to diminish anybody else's experience there, but this is my opinion.
Okay.
It's a giant hazing is all it is.
Really? I would not think that.
Warrant Officer Candidate School, in my opinion, again, just my opinion.
Right.
Again, I don't want to offend anybody. It was the only military school that I ever attended where I learned nothing.
Really?
Yes. There was one of our instructors there. She pulled us aside like the second or third weekend. It's gosh, if I remember correctly, 5 or 6 weeks long. But she pulled us aside. She's like, yeah, well, if you want to get to the end of this, you have to jump through our little hoops that we put in front of you and this, that, whatever, try to give us a pep talk. And it was right then that I'm realizing, okay, this is pointless. This is literally just a hazing is all this is. And
like a basic training style kind of.
Yeah.
Only they're not really. They're just
what
messing with you.
What they're trying to instill in you, I think, is they're trying to instill a sense of being able to organize yourself during chaos.
Okay,
I guess is the best way.
Stressful situations.
Yeah, that's the best way I can think of it. But it's the stressful situations that they induce are not really that stressful. It's more of a time management thing, really, than anything else. And again, maybe that's what they were trying to teach us. I don't know, but it was a skill that whatever it was, I already had apparently because I didn't learn anything in that school.
All right. Okay. I mean, so you go down there, you feel some ways. But anyway, you come out now. You're a warrant officer.
Well, yeah, you have to go through Warrant Officer Candidate School, and then you have an advanced course you have to go through. You have to go through SEER school.
Okay.
SEER C.
So you do SEER before you go through. And again, SEER is survival, escape,
resistance, and evasion.
Resistance and evasion.
Yep.
And I know you can't really talk about a lot of that. Some of it you can.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it sucks.
I will tell you this, that school, yes, it sucks. I would not wish to repeat it, but I'm glad that I did it because you learn a lot about yourself in that school. You can tell yourself that, it's not real. You can tell yourself, okay, they can't really hurt me. You can tell yourself, you can rationally tell yourself many things about this school, but ultimately between, the sleep deprivation and the hunger and the situations that they put you in, it becomes real in your mind.
Can you, and if you can't talk about it, then that's, I get it. And for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But I've heard you can be put into boxes.
Yes.
I've heard you can be put into 55-gallon drums.
Yes.
That are sealed, and they will stick a water hose and begin to fill it up. I've heard some of these things. We don't want to get, but is any of that true?
Yes, all of that's true.
You're 6'4",
minus the ceiling of the 55-gallon drum. That didn't happen to me, but
you're put in a small confining box.
I experienced something like that. Yes.
Okay. So you were put in a very tight.
Yes.
That if you are claustrophobic, you would not be able to do it.
It was horrifying to some people. Yes.
And you're not put in there for 10 minutes.
No, it's an extended period of time.
You're putting in for an X amount of time that it's long enough to make you
essentially. So what SEER school is it's an inoculation. It's something where they say, you know what, things like this could happen to you, but much worse. but we're going to give you a small taste of it. It's an inoculation.
And you learn you can deal with it.
You learn you can deal with it, but you also learn where your breaking points are because everybody hits a breaking point.
That's right. Yep.
Everybody does.
Yep. Okay.
So,
we'll leave
but
it
like
at
I
that.
said,
Yep.
it's one of those schools that I wouldn't care to do again, but it's one that I'm glad I went through because I did learn a lot about myself.
That was one school that I never, ever had any desire to go to.
Yeah, it's
because it's just a big suck fest.
Yes, it is.
But all the guys I've known that have done it at the same time say basically what you said.
Yep.
I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
Because I learned a lot, not just about myself, but how you deal with. Actual, yeah.
Well, and there's, to my knowledge, there are 3 different SEER schools. There's the original, which is in North Carolina.
Okay.
There's one, if I remember correctly, I think the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii has their own SEER school.
Oh, okay.
As well.
I didn't know that.
And then there's one in Fort Rucker, Alabama, which is the one we went through
for the Army, and then of course the Air Force, and I don't know if the Navy has their own. I know the Air Force has their own.
Yeah, and they do send other branches to ours as well. But and some people will say, "Oh, well, the rural one is in North Carolina. You didn't really go through the rural." I'm telling you right now, it's not.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's hard training and it sucks.
Right. Yeah.
It just sucks. But they realize that as pilots, most of the time SEER school and survival schools are reserved for the forward operators, right? The ones that are going to be across enemy lines, high likelihood of getting captured, high likelihood of getting tortured, that sort of thing.
Right.
But there was apparently light bulb that went off somebody's head that said, "Hey, wait a second, these guys are getting there by pilots who are dropping them off there. So there's a chance. What happens when they get shot down? Right, exactly. Then of course you have the Mogadishu thing that happened. Whatever. I don't know. When they started the SEER school in Rucker, maybe it was before that or after that. I don't know. But there was a realization there that yes, these guys need this training as well.
Right, and it makes sense.
Yeah,
yeah.
So now, if you go down to flight school, you have to pass SEER school before you do anything flight related. Essentially, at least it was when I went through.
Well, and that makes sense because if you're gonna break,
yes,
I'm guessing mentally.
Yes.
You're going to break doing that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Versus,
Yeah, absolutely.
So you make it through there.
Yep.
You're happy to be done with that.
Yes.
Now you're moving over. You're
starting to fly.
Yeah. Now comes the fun part.
Yes. So I will say this about flight school, about flying in general.
Okay.
Wiggling the sticks is the easy part.
Right.
It's all the other stuff that goes along with it that's hard. Having to know your airspace and how to operate within airspace and how to read certain publications and how to read templates, and on top of that you have to learn the different parts of the aircraft, the different what's hooked to what. If this emergency goes off, you have to do this. You have to memorize certain aircraft limitations and emergency procedures just off the top of your head without reference to any sort of a book. There's a lot that goes into it it's mentally, you have to be able to remember a lot and be able to do a lot.
Well, yeah, obviously you can't be stupid and be a pilot. The Army's not, you have to be an intelligent, and I can only imagine, like you're saying, all the small things to remember procedurally and all that. But one thing years ago when you and I were having a conversation about this, and I thought this was interesting, you had said that, you think about an airplane, it's a parafoil. It wants to fly.
Yep.
An airplane wants to fly. A helicopter wants to fall to the ground.
Yeah.
You're literally beating the air into submission with the rotor. And then, of course, you have to have a tail rotor to keep it,
Counter torque. Yep.
It's just, there is a lot going on there.
Yeah, and without getting too technical or too into the weeds about it, essentially, yeah, you're right. An airplane has what they call a symmetrical airfoil. Those are the wings. It's the same shape on top as it is bottom, so air flows over equally on all sides, right? With a helicopter blade, it's an asymmetric airfoil. So the top of the blade, if you look at the curve of the top of the blade, it is longer. It takes a longer path than the bottom of the blade. So what happens is air has to move faster over the top than the bottom.
The older I get, this is the kind of stuff I love.
It creates a low pressure above the blade, and that's what helps you create lift.
I've never thought about it. So the blade is like,
yes,
wow,
almost like kind of like a flat teardrop,
man,
on one side.
Engineers are cool.
Heck yes, they are.
The older I get, the more I appreciate what engineers, man, Somebody had to figure that out.
The person who worked for Sikorsky that made the mechanical mixing unit for the Blackhawk, I think they said ended up committing suicide after he came up with that mechanical mixing unit because it was such a complicated thing that it basically drove him crazy. I don't know if that's true or not.
You know what? It wouldn't surprise me. There's a fine line between genius and insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
And guys like that, they a lot of times walk that edge.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So,
but actually, hovering a helicopter is harder than flying the helicopter because again, you have to get all those things in balance.
So okay, you're doing all your technical stuff, and then you're also starting to go up.
Yep.
You go up with instructors, different kind of birds, I'm guessing. Do they start you off in a Blackhawk?
No, you start out we started out in what they call a TH-67, which is basically the civilian model of like the OH-58 helicopter, the Scout helicopter, but it's a civilian model.
All right, so it's like a littler bird than a Blackhawk, and you're learning. You got your instructor there with you.
Yep.
So you're doing that, okay? And I'm guessing you're loving it.
Yeah. So, you take off for the first time and your instructor, he takes you out and he gets you up in the air. And as you're taking off and you're, actually getting up into the air, he looks over at you and he's like, "You got the controls." You're like, "Okay."
I've got one.
So you grab him, you're like, "I got the controls." And he just lets go. And you're like, "Oh crap, here we go."
Yeah.
So you come into your, remote landing area, that you're going to be training at. And, he's like, I got the controls. You got the controls. You hand it back over to him, and he comes in and he brings it down to a perfect 3-foot hover or whatever it is. I don't remember what you're supposed to hover at in the TH-67, but I think it's 3 foot. And he's like, "All right." He goes, "What I'm going to do." He goes, "We're going to teach you how to hover." He said, "But we're going to do one control at a time." You're like, "All right." So he says, "Okay." He says, "Grab the cyclic." And so you grab the cyclic only. He's like, he guards the cyclic control, that's the one between your legs that, gives you your left, right, forward, back, right? And he's like, "All right." He goes, "You have the cyclic." "I have the cyclic." He has the collective, which is the one on, the left-hand side that, gives you your lift or,
Because you're using your feet too, right?
Well, yeah. And he has the pedals as well. Yeah. Because your feet controls your counter torque.
Okay.
Right? Because, it's
right.
Newton's laws of motion, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You pull power in, you have a counterclockwise rotating blade. The fuselage of the aircraft's going to want to spin clockwise.
So you have to
put in counter torque.
Right.
And that's what the tail rotor is. So it basically gives you one control at a time. He has you wiggle the sticks, do whatever, each one at a time, singly, as he's controlling the other ones. And then once you're done doing that, so you figure out what controls do what. He's like, "All right, I want you to maintain a 3-foot hover." And he's like, "You have the controls." You're like, "All right, I'm on the controls." And so you're sitting there, and of course, in your mind, you're thinking, "Okay, I am going to be as rigid as I possibly can and hold this thing as still as I possibly can because I don't want to screw this thing up," right? Because anytime you put power in, you get a tail rotor in, that's going to do this. Right. But of course, you don't account for wind gusts or anything like that. So wind kind of blows, you start to kind of float a little bit, one direction or the other. So you're like, "All right." So you put a little bit of cyclic in. Well, when you put that little bit of cyclic in, that changes lift on a different part of the main rotor blade. So now all of a sudden, you have to adjust your power a little bit to compensate for that. And you adjust your power, and all of a sudden you have to adjust your tail rotor a little bit to adjust for the power for the lift. And all of a sudden, like within about 5 seconds, you're all over the place, and you feel like you're going to fly the thing into the ground. You're about to crash, and he's like, "All right, I got the controls." He settles it back down, and you do that over and over. And then he's like, "All right, well, we're going to do a pattern." He starts to take you off. You do a pattern. All right, you got the controls. You fly the pattern. And so eventually, he's like, "All right, look." He's like, "Don't stress over this," because at the end of the first week, you're like, "My gosh, I'm never going to get this." Yeah. Right? He's like, "Don't stress over it." He goes, "It will click one day." He goes, "I promise you, it'll just click." And we had a long weekend. I don't know what it was, Memorial Day or whatever weekend it was. And we came back after that long weekend, and we get in. He's like, "All right, fly us out to our first RT." So we fly out there. He's like, "All right," he goes, "Bring us down to a hover." He didn't take the controls from me. Like, "All right, cool." So I fly in, I come down, and all of a sudden, boom, perfect 3-foot hover, didn't move. And I'm like, what in the world is going on?
Yeah. Where has this been?
It just clicked.
Where has this been?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And it's like, he was right. It just clicked.
So now you're training and you're done with that bird. You move to your Blackhawk.
Nope. From there, you go to the OH-58.
Ah, okay.
A military aircraft. Right. And that's where you learn how to do your basically map reading and flying by map. So nap of the earth.
Nap of the earth,
yep.
Yeah.
That's where you learn how to do that flying. And basically what you do is you create flight plans. You fly certain, headings and distances by time and by landmark. And you are supposed to hit a training area or an LZ by a certain time flying by nothing but map. And that's a lot more difficult than what it seems. I was pretty fortunate because having been in the infantry for 10 years, I'm familiar with maps. However, you use a different scale map whenever you're flying.
Okay.
So I had to retrain my brain. Like I can look at, your standard, map that you'd have in the infantry, one over 50 thousandths or whatever it was. And I could look at that, and in my head, I could say, okay, I can picture the distance based on this map, how far it is from here to here. I can look out over that horizon. I can estimate about how far that is on this map.
Right.
In the aviation, I wasn't able to do that because it looked different. So I had to retrain my brain how to see the map, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. So I could see that would have been.
Yeah.
There's a lot of So you're doing and then from the OH-58.
Then you go into your Blackhawk.
Now you're into the Blackhawk.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Of the three birds,
Yeah.
is the Blackhawk the most fun to fly? Or are they all about the same?
The Blackhawk was the easiest to fly.
Okay.
And that's only because it is such a large aircraft. It is so heavy, and you have so many other components of that aircraft that are helping you fly it. And by flying, I'm not talking about it takes off for you or whatever, but you have different, like that mechanical mixing unit that I'm talking about. You don't have that on the smaller helicopters. And what that does is they've figured out a way. Okay, so again, not to get too technical, but you pull in on the collective, right? Which is the thing that makes you go up and down. Okay, that changes the pitch on all the rotor blades at the same time to either give you lift or you push it down to come down. When you do that, again, you have that counter torque, right? Equal and opposite reactions. So when you do that, you have to put in, if you pull in on your collective, you have to give it left pedal, which basically counteracts, will point the nose back around to the left. It counteracts that input that you made.
So for some small movement, you got three things going on there.
Exactly. Now with the Blackhawk, when you do that, the mechanical mixing unit helps you with that.
Okay.
So you pull up the collective on the Blackhawk, you don't necessarily have to put in any sort of tail rotor input because it's going to help you by doing that for you.
Okay.
Okay. And that's what that mechanical mixing unit does. It has, I think, 4 different servos, if I remember correctly. It has, oh, good gosh. It's been a while since collective, pitch, roll, and yaw, if I remember correctly, are the 4 servos that it has.
Let me ask you this. The first time you do a solo flight, is it in the Blackhawk?
No.
No, you'd already done solos.
You don't do solos in the Army.
Well, oh yeah, I never thought about that.
Because you are in flight school in your TH-67 when you
Yeah.
learn how to fly the helicopter. You're with a flight instructor when you fly your OH-58 to do your map reading, and then you're with a flight instructor whenever you're in the Blackhawk, and a Blackhawk is a 2-pilot aircraft.
Yeah, so when you get back to your unit,
You don't ever solo.
you've got a co-pilot. I never even thought about that.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Like, what's the max that you can go in that? I don't want to say max, but I mean, for typical.
I've never flown this high, but if you get above basically what you would be considered like 10,000 feet, then you start getting into hypoxia type situations where you have to start worrying about hypoxia if you don't have supplemental oxygen. So you would never fly that high anyway.
5,000 maybe.
So I think the highest I've ever flown is like 6,000-ish feet, and that's when I was under IFR conditions, instrument flight rule conditions, and I was being basically given vectors and altitudes by a air traffic controller flying into an airport.
Okay.
So that's not something that you would just go out and, hey, we're going to go up to 6,000 feet today and fly around.
Right.
That's something that you're directed to do. Usually whenever you're out flying around and you're not doing instrument flight rules, you're doing visual flight rules, or you're just doing a point A to point B. You're not doing any sort of flight following with ATC or any of that sort of stuff. It's
how awesome is it to fly a Blackhawk?
Oh,
I mean, that's a dumb question.
I love it. Yeah, I miss it a lot. But I deployed with the aviation unit that I was with.
Okay. Well, now where did you deploy?
Okay, so I was stationed in Decatur,
right,
which is Alpha Company, first of the 106. Which reminds me. Here.
Oh, hey, cool.
I got you a patch.
Hey, you got me a patch.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll put that up on the wall. And you brought me a flag today, which the flag was one of 5
yes
that you flew.
Yep. What
in
Kuwait?
in Kuwait.
In this deployment we're getting ready to talk about.
I'm gonna put it up there. I'm probably gonna replace that right there.
Awesome.
Well, I don't know. I'll do something nice with it, but thank you for that. That's awesome.
So yeah, I deployed. I went through flight school. It took me 2008 to 2009.
Okay.
Took me roughly a year and a half because they have a very bad management of how they do their classes down there, and you don't go through everything just boom, 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 and get it done. It's like you go through one part and then you have to wait forever till the next class opens up, and then another one, and then so on and so forth. Anyway, so my deployment with aviation was again back over to Kuwait. This time we were in Camp Buehring, Kuwait. This was in 2012.
Okay.
And essentially we were just a taxi service. We would fly essentially routes from Camp Buehring down to Camp Air John and back. We didn't get a whole lot of flight time. I think there was, if I remember correctly, like about 10 flight hours a day for the whole flight company. So some days you didn't fly, but most days you would get like maybe 1-2 hour flight. But it did do some cool stuff while I was there though. We were, I think this is when the piracy thing started really kind of kicking up, was around that time.
With the Somalis?
Yeah,
okay.
If I remember correctly. But essentially, they didn't really tell us at first what we were doing, but ultimately it came out that what they were trying to do is to see if a National Guard unit could work well enough with an active duty special forces unit to go and insert them onto a ship if need be.
Right.
So what I got to do a couple different times while I was there was I actually got to fly out over the North Arabian Gulf onto Navy ships and land on Navy ships out there. I got to land on a guided missile destroyer.
Okay. Now, I'm thinking,
how cool is that?
That is as cool as it gets, because in my mind, tell me how wrong I am here, because I've only ridden in helicopters.
Yeah.
Right. The ship, he's got his thing going with the oceans, the currents.
Yep.
So it's completely different. Well, not completely, I guess, but you have to take into consideration what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
How much more difficult is that?
It's more difficult in a couple different ways. First off, obviously you have a limited room for error. Obviously,
Sure.
you're so close to the bulkhead of the ship whenever you're landing on it. When it comes to the listing of the ship, the rocking back and forth and the up and down and whatever, we were pretty fortunate that we had pretty smooth seas whenever we did it.
Right.
So that wasn't as much of an issue. But they're also moving forward. They're moving, right, as you're landing.
I never even thought about that.
They're moving forward probably like 7 to 10 knots maybe. So you're bringing your helicopter in. When you do this, basically you approach from a 45-degree angle. You get down on your briefing. You get what the ship deck height is based off of what their load is off the ground or off the ocean. And so what you do is you come down to an altitude that is more or less, I forget what the altitude was, 10 or 15 feet above what that is. So when you come into the ship, basically you're coming in at a 45-degree angle and you're 20, 30, 40 feet off of the ocean. But then as soon as you cross the deck onto the ship, you're 10 feet off it, right? So if the deck of the ship's 30 feet above the water, you're at 40 feet flying over the water. So when you cross the deck of the ship, you're 10 feet above it. Your brakes are set. You come into a hover, and then you set it straight down. Boom, and that's it. You don't move. You level out your rotor blades. Everything. You neutralize everything, but your brakes are set so you don't roll. And then when you take off, you do the same thing. You come up to a hover. You turn at a 90-degree angle, and you fly off the edge of the boat. Now, while we were doing this, and this just absolutely flabbergasted me, we had Iranian gunboats that were running chicken routes with our guided missile destroyer.
Why do we allow that?
I don't know, but this thing could have absolutely obliterated these small boats that these guys were on. But they would go out and make a big old circle. They would come out and they would like charge them, come straight at them. I don't know how far off the deck they were, but then they would turn. And they were running these like chicken ring routes this whole time we were out there, and I mean, like, they played so many they tried to play games with us, I should say. I mean, we have a thing called guard channel, right? It's on our UHF radios that you always monitor. It's basically like an emergency frequency in case somebody goes down. Somebody's always monitoring it. We would go and we would be flying our route there in Kuwait from Burt Buring to Airshon, and all of a sudden, once in a while, you would hear them come on the guard channel, and they'd be like, aircraft at such and such location, you're flying into Iranian airspace, turn heading, blah 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 blah, lest you be blown out of the sky or whatever.
Right. They're trying to,
and what they were trying to do is turn you into their airspace to try to basically create an international incident. Is what they were trying to do. It's just absolutely insane.
Yeah. Why we tolerate the things we tolerate.
I know.
Our enemies certainly would.
Because we're better than they are.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because if they had what we have, they'd be hitting us,
Yep.
But yeah.
Because we're better than they are.
That's right.
That's what it boils down
we
to.
are. And, I'm tired of,
I know. Politics, I get it.
Yeah, I'd love to. But so, all right. So that has to be to be a guy that's in charge of that aircraft.
Yeah.
You and one other guy, whether he's outranks you or you outrank him, either way, you guys, you're in charge. You're running that bird.
Yeah.
That kind of equipment has got to be, it's cool to drive a car fast.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Or a dirt bike or whatever you're into. I cannot imagine that.
Yeah.
Just that sense of, and then you get up and clear skies and
hopefully.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, okay. Let me ask you, what's your, let's go the other way with it then.
Uh-huh.
We've talked about the coolness.
Yeah.
What's your worst flight? Anything ever? Obviously you hear.
Probably the most butt puckering flight that I had, ironically, was relatively clear day. We had flown down to Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Okay.
And we were doing simulator training down there.
All right.
And we had come back, or we were turning around to come back to fly back to Illinois. And we looked at the radar before we left, and we could see there was a real small band of thunderstorms.
All right.
Right around the Kentucky, Illinois border area, basically over the Ohio River.
Like around Paducah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could see this as we were coming up to it, and it was tall enough we really couldn't get over it, and it was low enough we couldn't really get under it, but we could also see, because we were low enough we could still get cell phone service. So one of us had the cell phone pulled up. We could see on the weather radar, that it wasn't real thick. It was pretty thin. So we called ahead to ATC, and we said, hey, look, we're encountering this. We're on a VFR. You guys are flight following us VFR. We would like to go intermittent INC through this.
Which means quickly.
Yeah, basically intermittently go flying instruments. You can't see.
Okay. You're not going off what you're seeing with your eyes.
Because you're going to be in the clouds.
You're going off what my instruments in the cockpit are showing me.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we basically requested, hey, look, is there, can we do this? Get permission to do it? Is there any other aircraft near us that we have to worry about? So on and so forth. They gave us permission to do that, right? We're not going to be, they're flight following us, meaning they're tracking us, tracking our transponder on their radar. There's no other aircraft around us. So we're clear to punch into these clouds and basically fly through them.
Okay.
Right. We hit the edge of these clouds, and they're cumulus clouds, which you shouldn't fly through those anyway, but there's no way we can get around it.
And you can't go above it like a big jet. You can go over
exactly.
But this, okay.
So we punch into this thing, and I'm on the controls. The pilot in command at the time, of course, he's working the radios and everything, kind of watching everything. Man, we hit this thing, and it starts throwing us around like crazy. You're flying, all of a sudden you're like 1,500 feet per minute, rate of descent, and you're trying to pull collective, try to maintain your altitude. You kind of pitch back a little bit, try to, get a little bit of climb, your airspeed starts blowing, and all of a sudden, boom, you catch another, updraft, and now it's rocketing you upward at 2,000 feet per minute. And trying to hold that aircraft steady was almost impossible. But luckily we were only in it for like a few minutes and popped out the other side, and it was good. Now, the other real butt puckering moment that I had, again, we talk about aircraft, right? You talk about your tail rotor, that's your counter torque, right? Keeps your fuselage straight. We have a thing called loss of tail rotary effectiveness, LTE.
Okay.
That is exactly what it sounds like. If you're flying and you have loss of tail rotor effectiveness, basically your tail rotor is not working properly.
And that's real bad.
That is bad, especially if there's a mechanical failure. Now, you have mechanical failures and you have aerodynamic failures. Those are two different things, right?
Right.
You have the physical forces that actually drive it, but then you also have the aerodynamic forces, which, it's pushing the air, right? So when we were at our MOB station to go to Kuwait for this deployment, we actually flew over to Albuquerque, New Mexico to do our high altitude training because it's pretty high there, right, above sea level.
Yeah.
And we were doing, practicing pinnacle landings and doing things like that, like where you take your landing gear on one side and you like rest it against the rock and you kind of bring it down level.
Ooh,
and doing stuff like that, right? So we could, I think I have a picture of this. I'll show you later. I might have it on my phone, but we could see that there's a storm moving in, but we needed to get some training in because we had a very limited time there in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because then we had to fly back to Fort Hood, which is where we actually deployed out of.
Right.
So we're trying to get some pinnacle landings in near this airport that we were at. If I remember correctly, it's on the north side of Albuquerque. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, we were just trying to hit some of those pinnacles that was near it to try to beat the storm before it came, because you could see the storm front coming. And, we were doing some landings, doing this, whatever. And then finally, whoever's in charge said, all right, let's call it. Everybody go back, shut down. So we're like, all right, cool. So we fly back to this airport and I land the aircraft. And of course the Blackhawk, it has wheels. It doesn't have skids. So you roll it on, you roll into where you're going to park it. I'm turning onto this taxiway. And as I turn onto the taxiway, the squall line from this storm hits.
Okay.
The squall line is like the heavy winds, right? The big push in front of the storm.
Right.
It hits me. And as I'm rolling, I look over at the PC, the pilot command. And I was like, dude, I have LTE. I can't turn. And he's like, what? I had actual full tail rotor in to try to turn this aircraft to the left, and it wasn't turning. So I hit the brake on the right side because you have independent brakes. I hit the brake on the right side to try to kind of pull the nose around to try to finish turning onto this taxiway because I had complete loss of tail rotor effectiveness at that point in time.
Holy cow.
That was another butt puckering moment.
Yeah, and you're on the ground.
Yeah.
But
because you have this 14 to 16,000 pound aircraft that you're in control of, that you lose control of. I mean, you don't have full control out of one of your inputs. I mean, that was scary.
Oh yeah, I bet so.
But I mean, we survived it. It was kind of cool. And like I said, I took a picture. I might have it on my phone.
Well, what was that landing you're talking about where you land like on the edge? Because I've heard
Pinnacle.
Because I've heard like the special forces guys and stuff.
Yeah.
I've listened to some of their podcasts where they'll have like the Chinook pilots will drop the edge or the back ramp, and they will literally land on the side of a mountain and they walk off. And I'm like, man, that kind of precision, that's impressive.
We practice that stuff.
That's crazy.
Even during flight school, it's kind of a way to work on your pilotage and your confidence. Like there was one, we were in the Blackhawk, or we went in and they had like this little levee area that had like a little pond on the other side of it. And we would actually fly over. We'd have the guy in the back spot us. We'd fly over to where we would put our tail landing gear, our tail wheel over the edge of this levee, and we would rest it on there, and we would bring the rest of the Blackhawk down while keeping that tail rotor right there and bringing it down level to where you don't have the sag. Because the Blackhawk, due to the tail rotor, it's so heavy that it actually the tail rotor drags a little bit whenever you're in hover. That's why when you see it, the nose is higher than the tail. That's why. It's because the tail is a little bit heavier.
Is it? I've heard this before among pilots. I always thought if you're an Army pilot, you would want a helicopter.
Right.
The Apache would be the epitome. But I've heard most of them like to drive the Blackhawk. It's kind of the preferred aircraft.
It depends. It depends on who you are and what you like to do, really. I mean, some guys like the Chinooks because the Chinooks, they're the big boys. They have huge lift areas on those blades. That's why you see them up in the mountains.
Right.
Because they have way more lift than any other, helicopter that we have, in the Army.
Right.
Blackhawks have a lot broader use for different missions and whatever you need to do. I mean, you can do sling loads with them. You can carry internal loads with them. You can do there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do with the Blackhawk. but then again, some guys like to be, gun bunnies. They like to, be Apache drivers.
Right.
They liked having all those weaponry and
yeah. I
mean, it just depends.
I never flew in a Blackhawk.
Yeah.
Never got to. I flew in Chinooks.
Yeah.
And when we were down at Polk, we had Hueys.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, Hueys are cool.
Yeah. Oh,
Got to do a door gunner mission one time.
That would be cool.
And that was fun. It was against the 82nd.
Yeah.
And we were low enough that I remember when we came over doing Nap of the Earth, of course, it's Louisiana.
Sure.
So Louisiana is about as flat, as you can get.
Yeah.
But we came up like this over this little tree line and we kind of dropped in and we were close enough because the guy was, telling us, basically just say left side, right side shooting. Okay.
Sure.
Well, my buddy's over there. He's engaging all kinds of targets. I've got nothing to shoot at. And I'm like, man, this sucks. And then we come over and I look and I'm like, left side. And I see the guy and we were close enough that I could see he had an 82nd patch on.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I mean, from that distance, that's
Yeah.
how close we were. I could see his patch and I could recognize it at his 82nd.
That's
he
cool.
He was sitting down against his ruck eating an MRE.
Yeah.
I started lighting him up. Yeah. So that was fun,
Yeah.
Okay. So you ended up retiring in 2016.
Yep.
With 20 years.
Yep.
In the military between active duty and reserve or I guess National Guard.
Yep.
Been a police officer the whole time.
Yep.
You're now,
the last 10 years of it, during the last 10 years of it, I was a police officer.
Okay. But at this point, I mean, like right now,
Yes.
you've been a police officer for
20 years.
for over 20. And we just had another police involved shooting just, I don't know what, a couple days ago.
Yep.
And, which we won't get into any of that, which I'd read that was the 7th one in Decatur. And I forget what the date was. The news said,
I think that's right. Yeah.
man,
Yeah, I was out there on it.
I just cannot wait till you are retired and you're away from that.
You and I both, brother.
Yeah, and I know we can't really because you're still working, so
Yeah.
we don't want to, but maybe, we can have another conversation.
Yes.
If we come back someday, we could talk about
Yep.
your time as a police officer. I'm sure you have a lot of interesting stories.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
I've again, maybe this is like a mental defense mechanism, but I have some stories, but most of it I've just blocked out,
Yeah.
And again, maybe it's a self-defense mechanism. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I can see well, I know from 27 years in the prison, and I did not work at a rough prison. Taylorville's not Menard.
sure.
So I don't want to oversell it. But at the same time, people, I think a lot of times they don't realize that, well, it's a minimum security prison, so they're in there for writing bad checks.
No.
You name a crime. We had predominantly sex offenders, child molesters, and rapists. That was because we were non-gang for, last couple of years we started getting gangbangers back, But even that, most of them were still sex offenders. But we had serial killers, murderers. You talk to most guys, they'll tell you those are probably the best inmates to have. But
Right.
Irregardless, whether it was drugs, whatever they were there for, the one thing, and you talked about, we all have these self-revealing moments, I guess, at times in our life.
Yeah.
It hit me that it's the language that you're used to vulgarity
Yes.
all the time.
Yeah.
And the things the inmates talk about are not anything any normal, decent person. They're worried about money. They're worried about the cars they drive. They're worried
Right.
about, sports, whatever, and that to me was the biggest. They're not talking about how, the physics of flying a helicopter,
Right.
and then you as an officer that are around that tend to mimic that.
Yeah.
And so you catch yourself speaking in manners and about things that you're like, man, why am I doing this?
Sure.
I guess maybe that might be as you get older, you approach middle age. So you're dealing with those people in their worst environment because when you got them, they're on drugs.
Yeah.
They're drunk. They're fighting with their wife.
Well, and I think the big difference though between what you do or what you did and what I do, what I did is I am not immersed in it the entire time that I'm at work. You were immersed in it. You were around it. You couldn't get away from it. With me, it's call to call.
Right.
Yeah, I'm in my squad car a lot of the times.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm exposed to it, in small bursts. So I'm not always around it.
Let me ask you this: when you first became a police officer, were cell phones with cameras a thing?
Not really.
No, it wasn't common.
They were there, but not
How much
as
has
it is
that?
now.
How much, in your opinion, has that changed policing?
It has changed policing a lot, not that we do things differently because we're being recorded. Because I mean, we do things the way we've always done it.
Right.
But what those recordings do is most of those recordings that you'll see a small clip of a larger event that happened, and social media, the people on social media will see just that little bit and they'll form that opinion, and that drives, unfortunately, policy and laws and everything else, because politicians want to keep their constituents happy. And so now it drives change within the law enforcement community as a whole. And, we're the same people we always were, regardless of what the policies are.
Right.
And you're going to have bad cops. There's no question about that. Just like anything, any large organization. I mean, but think of how many hundreds of thousands of police interactions there are daily, and how few of those go really bad. It's a fraction of a percent.
Right.
So to say that, policing as a whole, that there's some sort of a systemic problem with it, or that there's, the police as a whole are this or they're that or whatever. It's nonsense.
I've always said this about police officers, and I say the same about teachers. Police and teachers, there's nothing better than a good one, and there's nothing worse than a bad one.
Absolutely. There's nobody that hates bad cops more than good cops.
Exactly. Because, and the same as teachers, a teacher can take that kid that's a little backwards, maybe doesn't come from a good home, doesn't have that secure sense, and they can bring that child out and make them into a great human.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing higher than that. Same as a police officer, you can save somebody's life. You can pull a kid out of, a horrible situation, whatever it is, to where that child looks at you and says, he's my hero. I want to act like that. I want to be that man.
Absolutely.
And then again, the same thing on the other side. There's nothing worse than a bad one than a bad teacher that just berates a kid and makes them to where they just turn against all authority and say, screw everybody.
Yep.
Same thing as a cop. Yeah.
Well, and I think another big part of that too, though, is, the 20 years that I've been policing, I'm seeing about the third generation now of kids raising kids. A lot of these people don't know what right looks like because they've never had it in their life. And it's a hard problem to fix, because where do you start with that?
Well, I read a book. This was 20 years ago, talking about where we're at today and how bad it's going to get, because they said, like in the crack epidemic in the 80s, you had grandma. Yeah. Grandma would raise the kids. Yeah. Because grandma didn't grow up on crack. Sure. Now her daughter may have, but she didn't. And of course, most of these times, whether it's, in your inner city, predominantly black neighborhoods, or your white trailer park, whatever you want to say. Right. A lot of times we know absentee fathers is that's huge. It transcends everything. Yeah, absolutely. But the problem was, now we're at the point where you're talking grandma and great grandma weren't raised right. Correct. So yeah, you're within your 20 years, you've seen, and they were talking about basically other countries have that, and I forget, there's a name down in Brazil. They're basically, they call them, I can't think of the Portuguese name for it, but they're feral children. Okay. And basically that you're going to have areas where you have these kids that have absolutely no sense of right and wrong. Yeah. It's just base instinct. It's Lord of the Flies. It's base instincts. What do I like? I only do things that feel good to me and get me, Yep. And my God, you're out there dealing with that, and Well, it's not all negativity, though. It's not all bad. I mean, I would say overwhelmingly, there's more people that support us than are against us. Well, when I have you come back, and we'll do this again sometime. Sure. The next time, maybe we'll wait till you're done. Once you're retired, okay, where you can free up a little bit more, sure, and not just the bad stuff, because everybody wants to know what's the worst thing, Sure. And I don't, we don't want to go, but also the good the good things. There has to be some moments in your life as a police officer that you walked and were like, thank you, God, I got to do something really cool today. I got to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we lose that as a society a lot. People forget that.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm kind of at the point now where I'm just, I think the things that, I don't want to say bother me, but I think the thing that gets me the most is, and I've said this before, I'm tired of seeing dead bodies.
Yeah.
I'm tired of seeing dead kids. I'm tired of seeing people who have passed away from natural causes. I'm just tired of seeing dead bodies. But then there's another part of me, though, that if you turn around and look, it's like a split personality almost, because it's like I keep putting myself in that situation.
Which I was going to say, you're also a volunteer firefighter, and you just got certified as an EMT.
Yes. So it's kind of one of those, you know, it's like the duality of man, I guess. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird.
There's part of that, but also, you know, EMT is a good skill to have.
It is. And I think deep down for me at my core, I have the mentality, no matter how much I want to deny it, the mentality is I don't trust anybody else to do it but me. If I don't do it, who's gonna?
I'm going to tell you something about yourself. You mentioned earlier that you were kind of, weak as a kid. You weren't drawn to, physical type stuff. You have one of your greatest abilities, I think, is my mom said it best one time. One of the best qualities you have is you never have taken yourself too seriously.
That's true.
And you are okay with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
You're fine with that.
Yeah.
And there is a toughness and a quality that most people, there's a difference there.
Yeah.
There's a difference between being the guy that walks into a bar and says, I'll knock out anybody in here.
Sure.
And there's a difference between a guy that can go sit out in the woods in the middle of the rainstorm, and then it turns to ice, and then, then it gets 100 degrees, and he's been out there for a week eating very little food, and he's just sitting on the side of the hill, and he's okay with that.
Yeah.
That's a different type of toughness, and you've always had that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, that's a fact. And yeah, it's,
I could tell you as I get older, I'm getting softer though.
Well, what's weird is I went through, I was similar too. I went through a phase early on in school. Well, I'd cry and I'd raise heck, and and that was a whole thing my parents had to deal with. But at some point, you figure out this is who I'm going to be. And I want to be like my dad, or I want to be like my grandpa, or I don't want to be, a weak little boy.
Sure.
And I think everybody goes through that. Well, I don't really remember where I was going with that, but there is a self-realization that I think that all normal people at some time have.
Sure.
And you, whether it's at a junior level in high school, or, you're 12 years old, 10, whatever it is, or even as a man, at least you should. And being able to be uncomfortable and not taking yourself too seriously, and I think that's a big part, because so many people are ego driven.
Yeah.
It's like, how many guys do you know that were in the military? A bunch.
Yeah.
And they didn't really do much. I'm one of them. I did a 3-year enlistment. I never deployed overseas. I've never been shot at. I had a very, very humble 3-year tour of duty, got to do a lot of cool stuff, but it was, but how many people try to overplay what they did?
Sure. Yeah. I'm fortunate. Like I said, I got to do some pretty cool stuff,
Jumping out of airplanes and repelling into, just the stories you've told here, and then how many other stories,
Yeah.
So what's next for you then? Once you're retired, EMT firefighter thing, or?
I don't know. For the firefighting part of it, I'm not the person that's going to be running into burning buildings. I can tell you that, because I've that part of me is that's for a younger man.
You've got that out of your system.
I'll do the EMT portion of it. I'll help pump the truck, whatever you need me to do to help support you. But I'm not going to be the guy putting on the SCBA and running into a building. I can tell you that. With that said, I don't know what I'm going to do in retirement. I mean, Laura, my daughter, she's just turned 10, so I know, right?
Good night.
But, she's like this tall already, but, so I'll work till she's out of school. I'm sure. I'm not going to, do nothing.
Right.
I just don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Yeah, well, I don't either. I mean, that's why, I guess I'm doing this for now to fill in the gaps. But anyway, Ty, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll do it again and
Sure.
maybe get into some other stuff.
All right, Josh.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.